This meeting of the Raleigh Conservation Commission and Open Space Committee is hereby called to order under authority of MGL Chapter 131, Section 40, the Town of Raleigh Wetlands Protection Bylaw and the Stormwater Management and Erosion Control Bylaw for May 27th, 2014. And I'll call the roll for attendance. Dave Delmonico, currently absent. Bob Garner is absent. Judy Keys.
Here.
Sam Strife.
Here.
Kurt Turner.
Here.
Doug Watson.
Here.
Chairing, and we have a quorum present, Mr. Chairman.
Any
Yes.
administrative review?
Yes, I do. I'd like to request authorization for payroll,
Yep.
if I may. And request for authorization on the hour sheet. I'd also like to verbally ask for consideration. You probably noticed that there was a number of hours that were utilized this past weekend producing various items for this meeting, as well as work on the open space plan. So I'd like to request be utilized, with more than likely that will result in my taking Thursday afternoon off, which will be convenient because the dentist wants to torture me some more, so.
It's fine with me, but if you want it in writing, just send me an email and I'll confirm it.
Yeah. Okay, just to keep flowing on things, request reimbursement for postage expense for the order of conditions for the Roman Catholic Archdiocese. 202 Main Street.
Letter to the Pope.
I'm sorry, I need your initial.
Well, shall we?
Sure. I think it's close enough.
This is a 7:45 item. This is a legal notice of the Raleigh Conservation Commission in accordance with the Wetland Protection Act, General Laws 131, Section 40, as amended, and the Town of Raleigh Wetlands Protection Bylaw. A public hearing will be held on Tuesday, May 27, 2014, at 7:45 p.m. at Town Hall Annex, 39 Central Street, to consider a request to determine applicability application filed by Shirley Kimball for proposed soil evaluations for design of a subsurface sewage disposal system, possibly within the 100-foot buffer zone of bordering vegetated wetlands at 30 Burley Avenue at 15 parcel lot 52 in Raleigh. Mr. Mineta.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. I don't know, do you want me to set it up, or when there's nobody here, or should we just?
I think we can
Okay.
do it from this.
The important people are all.
I know, well, I mean, I wanna,
You have the audience of thousands. yeah.
exactly. I'm here representing Shirley Kimball tonight, for a septic system repair at 30 Pearlie Ave. Outlined here is where we'd like to do the soil testing, and we have to maintain a minimum of 10 feet off the lot line. In green is the wetlands that was flagged by Patrick Seecamp. And orange on this plan is the 100-foot buffer zone. So we plan on being no closer than 55 feet with the soil testing.
And Brent, you went out and visited the site?
Yes, flat, previously developed lawn areas, so the disturbance is not going to occur in an unaltered plant community or a portion of the buffer zone. And it's pretty well near tabletop. My advisory to the commission in regards to conditions does not call for the erosion control to be initially installed because unless they get caught by a torrential downpour or something, and usually the work commences within an 8-hour period from start to finish, so
Right.
there seems very little risk of sedimentation or erosion going off property or negatively impacting any of the nearby forested buffer zone or bordering vegetated wetlands.
Okay. Seems pretty straightforward. Any comments by commissioners? Anything you want to add, Doc?
The other thing Brent and I had talked about out in the field was, assuming that the soil testing, everything goes well and we're able to maintain no closer than 55 feet, do I need to come back here with a notice of intent for the actual construction of the system?
Your thoughts?
Well, in this case, we have bordering vegetated wetlands that is off property.
Right.
And because of the orientation of the lot and development of the lot, we're not going to have any activity that's going to be in an area that hasn't been previously altered and developed.
Right.
The terrain is very flat. The potential activity here is going to be construction of a mounded system, probably 3 to 4 foot mound. We wouldn't, usually I would recommend consideration of a notice of intent if we were going to get into some kind of ongoing conditions, i.e. if we were going to request a no-cut, no-disturbance area.
Right.
In this case, with the bordering vegetated wetlands off property and almost the same width that the commission would normally look for
Right.
a no-cut, no-disturb. So there isn't any real, other than the project, of course, would have to go through approval process with the Board of Health, so that it would have to be appropriately engineered. In this particular instance, if the commission was comfortable considering this project just for an RDA for erosion control purposes, since we don't really know what the orientation and what the configuration is going to be, and it's obvious that it will have to be constructed within the buffer zone. And I'm not aware of any exemptions under the Minor Activities Act for a
Right.
single-family residence for a construction project of this particular nature, even though it may be 50 feet or more away. And as I expressed also as a condition here, we do have a nearby stream resource in that area, so I did recommend that a spill containment kit be on site. So in one sense, there is a need to appropriately condition the activities that are going on, but I'm not sure if the commission is comfortable. It doesn't seem like we would be getting into the aspect of needing to utilize recording to memorialize any type of perpetual restrictions that we might want to see for protecting those wetland resource areas. So if
Commissioners, any thoughts?
I don't have a problem.
Yeah, I don't either. I guess it's that somewhat unusual situation, but
Right.
it's when it's like this, why not? I just don't see any compelling reason
Right.
to go to the additional
And-
expense and time.
That's right.
Yeah, and the lot does not appear to have been developed by filling or anything, so I don't believe there's any type of past history that there were, wetland resources there.
But-
It's a flat pancake lot, and that's.
Happens to be near a stream, but not
Yeah,
near.
it's near forested
Yeah.
forested wetlands that also contains a stream, so, but there is a relatively decent offset there, so.
Yep. Okay, I think that's
Okay.
fine. Yep.
Excellent.
So we'll see you on that, but, yeah, let's do
Okay.
it that way.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Are you, also here on, I saw your name on something else, didn't I?
Only that the
The Montero one?
262 Main Street
Yeah.
had his former business associate.
Right.
Do the plans back in 2004, so.
So are you gonna be here for that or not?
No,
No,
Fine,
yeah.
got it. Okay.
no, nobody contacted me to.
Yeah, okay, that's fine, I was just gonna kinda try to accommodate your schedule
Oh,
if you were,
okay.
but if you're not, that's fine.
Yeah, we could provide you with some
Thank you very
interesting
much.
details.
Yeah, I bet, thank
All
you.
right, Thank you.
Actually, could you delay your departure?
What's that?
Could you delay your
I can.
departure?
Sure.
If the commission would entertain a motion for the issuance of a negative determination.
Oh,
Option number 3,
Yes,
with
right.
the conditions as recommended.
do I have such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All against? It's unanimous, lucky for you, because we barely have a quorum. You can walk out with it.
Excellent.
Thank you very much. May I take a moment? to
Yeah,
do the
please.
copy?
Right ahead.
Okay, the special conditions are the last page.
Yep.
There you go.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Well, not really.
Appears to be.
Come back, Tom. I don't even know if you were wrong.
His office is a top secret.
Mr. Todd. Back to the scene of the crime.
Came down to listen.
One concerned citizen, anyway.
I don't know, do you, I realize I haven't quite got my 8 o'clock, I didn't know if you wanted to read that? And I do have, I know you've seen it before, I do have some copies, a couple copies of the section 9, action steps.
Oh, yeah, I think I got one in my file. All right, whenever you're ready, Brent, I will.
Yeah, I'm gonna fire this in.
You conclude your career as conservation agent, Brent, you'll be mostly retired.
So I'll be what?
No,
Mostly retired?
I'll be reading a letter on another application.
And I think
If you wanna.
I will. I think if the video, I don't know if it's on the screen or not. But I think it would be helpful for the folks at home to see
Right.
the display, so I don't know from the camera, if the camera includes it, does it? Mr. Video Man?
Are you able to pick up our PowerPoint presentation?
All right. So this is the notice of public hearing and request for comments. The Rowley Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on the proposed Rowley Open Space and Recreation Plan update. The Open Space and Recreation Plan was originally issued in 2003 and expired in 2008. The 2014 update seeks to guide the town's efforts in conservation of natural resources and planning for recreational opportunities. There will be a brief presentation and review of the survey conducted in 2010 that sought public opinion for the setting of goals for future planning efforts related to open space and recreation. The Open Space and Recreation Plan Update 2014, including maps and supporting documents, may be examined at the Conservation Department, room number 4 at 39 Central Street. Office hours are Monday to Thursday, 9 a.m. to 12:30 p.m., or at the Rowley Public Library at 141 Main Street. The Open Space and Rec Plan Update 2014 is also available in electronic format, PDF, at the Town of Rowley website, www.town.rowley.ma.us, consisting of 3 PDF files. The public hearing on Tuesday, May 27th, 2014, commencing at 8 p.m. at the Town Hall Annex, 39 Central Street, Rowley, Mass., in room number 5. And at this time, all interested parties will be heard, and the Conservation Commission will also be accepting written comments until June 6th, 2014. Comments may be mailed to the Commission at P.O. Box 24, Rowley, 11969, or may be emailed to conservation@townofrowley.org. Very good. So, Brent?
Good evening, and also to supplement the announcement, I'm Brent Bazelak, Conservation Agent for the Town of Rowley. Been working in an administrative capacity to consummate the update of the Open Space and Recreation Plan, which was originally issued in 2003 and expired in 2008. And a number of folks have been working on it since then, and with the desire to the town article authorizing purchase of what's known as the Girl Scout property in order to receive consideration for state grant funding. Plan needs to be updated, so I've been working on this project for a few months now. Hard copies of the draft plan are also in the Board of Selectmen's office and available, as well as at the Rowley Public Library. So there's a couple of points of accessibility in case someone is not electronically proficient at downloading hard files. And to shamelessly take a section of the plan which summarizes it and talks about the fact that the plan contains a review of accomplishments since the last open space recreation plan, which I mentioned was authored and issued in 2003. And also, the plan looks towards the future as it should. The open space plan was researched and written with participation by the community. There was specifically a public survey to confirm the citizenry desire for setting different goals and directing activities towards open space and recreation in the town. Of course, Raleigh's natural resources and recreation facilities and our unique character are contained in the plan, as well as environmental problems and open space and recreational needs. Also, the plan seeks to set forth a path of implementation for the future so that Raleigh's natural environment is protected, and also so there's recreational opportunities provided for all of our citizens. Public survey, which was conducted in 2010, kind of reiterated goals that had been initially set forth in the 2003 plan. First, to preserve and protect the town's water resources. Also, to preserve and protect the town's natural resources, which those are actually kind of distinct, although they do go hand in hand. Thirdly, was to preserve and protect the town's scenic quality and our rural character. Finally, another goal identified in the public survey was to provide diverse recreational opportunities for residents of all ages and abilities. And finally, the goal was identified to educate the residents, about the ability, use, and protection of the town's open space and recreational resources. And so to that end, this draft plan contains a number of major objectives. Again, they kind of follow hand in hand with those goals, as they very well should be. And we have monitor and protect the groundwater supply, which of course is very important since it is our source of drinking water. Monitor and protect surface waters and wetlands. That goes hand in hand since the surface waters and wetlands are the source of our groundwater and contribute to its both quantity and quality. Monitor and protect the well fields, the direct areas where the groundwater is extracted that supplies our municipal drinking water. Strengthen coordination among boards and commissions, which is always a good thing to have boards identifying the same goals and directions, and also steering development and assisting development so that it fits in with the character of the community. Strictly enforce the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Raleigh's Wetlands Protection Bylaw. That goes with the protection of surface waters and wetlands. Create and utilize incentives for resource protection. This can be done through various means, coordination between planning and conservation departments, obviously to try and direct development into areas that are not environmentally sensitive, this would be one example. Also identify, acquire, and permanently protect key undeveloped parcels. I believe we have seen a recent manifestation of that with the town meeting article directing at preserving and protecting by acquisition what we all know as the Girl Scout property, which was substantially undeveloped and contains many wetland resource areas. Encourage agricultural uses and agricultural practice. Another objective is to strengthen the programs for protection of scenic and historic resources. And next to the last objective, develop new and improve existing recreational facilities, including parks and playgrounds. Example of that is the effort underway with the Brad Street Farm property, where a parcel was specifically identified for recreational use, and the work is forging ahead to try and see that there's some recreational opportunities provided there. Improve access for people with disabilities. This is an important component of planning, especially for providing open space opportunities for those with disabilities, as well as recreational opportunities to the maximum extent practical. And finally, develop a program to disseminate information concerning the available town resources on the town website. And part of that is the example of this draft plan being posted on the website, so it has a much broader audience can access it. This is one of the maps contained within the plan. The plan has a number of different maps in it. This specific one is identifying lands of conservation and recreation interest. In this case, the Girl Scout property was highlighted as being one to be watched, where we also have some areas that have seen some protection activities, as well as, of course, it highlights already protected property here. This is the Parker River National Fish and Wildlife Refuge, and then we have other state protected management areas in that too. We have the Georgetown Raleigh State Forest, just as a brief orientation, that property. And we have some of the town open space that's already protected, as well as the recreational fields in Ayers Park, and then the Hunsley Hills area on the other side of Haverhill Street. Again, just an example of one of the maps contained within the draft plan. And finally, the section where everything is attempted to be pulled together, and this is section 9, which contains a proposed 5-year action plan, which sets forth objectives, actions, and responsible parties. Basically, a pathway towards implementing some of the goals and objectives that are identified in earlier sections of the plans. And various organizations or boards are identified in this plan with the suggestion for timelines for implementation or for ongoing efforts. And finally, that specific section is accompanied by a map which calls out various areas. And again, it happened, since it was prepared in 2012, happened to identify the Girl Scout property, which we've recently seen steps being taken in town to preserve and protect it. And so as we both plan for the future, we also can celebrate some of the past accomplishments. This is a very picturesque photograph of the Brad Street farmhouse with the fall colors, foliage in full bloom. So that is an accomplishment that was directed by the past 2003 to 2008 plan. And of course, since we're fortunate to reside in Raleigh, we also should never go too far away and should remember our history. And our roots are very important here in the community and are recognized and appropriately documented in the plan as a guidepost to help us as we go towards the future. And so once again, the Conservation Commission invites written comments. We invite inquiries or your review and inspection of the draft plan, or if you're electronically capable of downloading the PDFs and examining them at your leisure, we invite, again, comments to either be mailed or emailed to the Commission. Thank you very much.
I would just like to add that Brent has been a real stalwart in bringing this together in fairly rapid way. The preparation of this plan had somewhat fallen by the wayside over the years. It was difficult to find what had been done before, to collate it, to put it into electronic form that could be used, and he pulled that together faster than I think any of us thought was possible. It was important to do it quickly because, as mentioned, the Girl Scout property and the funding for it is somewhat dependent upon having this completed and approved by the state. So thank you, Brent. It would not have happened without you.
Amen.
Members of the public, any comments? Mr. Todd, anything you'd like to?
No, just observing right now.
Okay. Anything
I'll
else?
get wound up sooner or later.
Well, you have till June 6th. So the process, as I understand it, is we will accept public comment until June 6th. We will, at that time, I suppose, close the public comment period, finalize the plan, and present it to the, I guess it goes to the selectmen
It's going to be,
first, or not?
no, well, I don't actually think so. Nothing I read indicated that. They have been invited and presented with a plan to review.
Right.
And I'm
So we're more,
gonna solicit
their
their
comment.
comment and support,
right,
and then the draft will go to the state, the Department of Conservation Services, I believe, for their review and comment.
right. And then somewhere in that process, we will finalize the plan and it will become our open space and rec plan. So that's the timetable. It should be in place by midsummer,
Yeah.
would be the general concept here. All right, anything else anyone wants to add on the subject of the open space and recreation plan update?
I got a question.
Okay.
There's many parts of Rowley, and I was wondering if there was any thought of having recreation areas other than walking paths in different parts of the town, you know, like baseball fields, things like that.
I think the rec committee is probably I can't answer that question, but I think the rec committee could.
Yeah, well, there's the possibility that analysis of the Girl Scout property, since there's a pre-existing ball field, although it's a little bit of a distance away from
From the
any
road.
roadway access at this point in time. So we don't know whether that presents an opportunity or a challenge or both in one package, but that does move out of, I realize what you're talking about, and that is that currently most of the recreational opportunities, i.e.
Right.
developed fields, are in two distinct locations, Haverhill Street, Ayers Park, Haley Field, and then Pine Grove School.
Right.
Even with the possible development of the Brad Street Parks and Rec parcel, that still is right adjacent to the already utilized fields at Pine Grove, so that doesn't geographically disperse
Right.
the opportunity right at this point in time. So it's hard to say at this point in time, but there is a large field that the Girl Scouts utilized for playing baseball. It is kind of out in the woods, so to speak.
I do know that it's a concern of that committee, that the population center of the town has shifted to the west, but the recreational facilities are not. And that's something that if it can be addressed, would be good to address.
When you think of, in the old days, this was a center school, but it was an East End school, a Ruby Plains school, a Clay Lane school, all these different schools around, about 5 different schools around town. And if it was necessary to have schools in, say, 5 different parts of town, then why wouldn't recreation more or less kind of follow the same pattern?
I think that is a goal. The problem, as I understand it, is finding appropriate sites. You know, a ball field needs a large, flat, accessible site with parking, with appropriate drainage. There are, again, really the rec committee is in a better position to address this, but there aren't so many of those sites left in town that lend themselves to that. But I think what Brent said is also my understanding, is that's one of the desirable possibilities for use of the Girl Scout property.
Well, another question is, we've got Eris Park up there, and I can remember years ago, Jim Bowen and I set up the grading plan for that. And if you go down Smith Lane through to Weathersfield Street, it seems as though there should be a connection between Gabriel Street and Weathersfield Street, which would go through the Girl Scout camp. And in so doing, you know, instead of having to go up the Dodge Road or down Route 1, there'd be a connector in there, something like that. It would kind of tie things together, at least in that part of town.
Yep. I think that's I'm sure that's a thought. Smith Lane would be the obvious place for it to go, but
Used to be an ice house down there.
used to be an ice house down there? Okay. Know that. Now that the Girl Scout camp is possibly going to come under town control, that may be a possibility that could be explored. Of course, before it was private property. So.
That used to be common gates. Dodgers owned 200 acres in there, and Johnny Bradstreet owned 100 acres in common when I was a kid, once upon a time.
You're talking about the Girl Scout property, or the?
Yeah.
Cool. How long was it a girl, you might know the answer to this question, we were talking about it a few months ago. How long was it a Girl Scout property?
You got a neighbor right there.
I know, he doesn't know.
I moved into town in 1978, and it was a Girl Scout property at that time.
Right.
Not much before him.
Okay.
It's when Paul Dodge sold and Johnny Bradstreet sold, and the Girl Scouts bought it. And that's about all I can tell you.
That's all we should,
Yeah. But I always was kind of amazed when they talked about, you know, the common land between the two families.
Yeah.
And, but it's, you know, it's an interesting part of the history of the town.
Right. All right, anybody else have anything to add on the subject?
I moved to close the public hearing.
I guess that is what we do, okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All against? So the public hearing is closed, but as mentioned a couple of times, comments from the public will be accepted until June 6th in writing, electronically, really any way you want to get them to us. We will incorporate them and consider them. Very good. Thank you again, Brent.
You're welcome, thank you.
And thank you for your thoughts, Mr. Todd.
May I request consideration of one thing, although I don't know. Normally, it's requested that the Conservation Commission comment and consider providing a written letter of support for the open space and recreation plan. Now, in this case, we're kind of
Might go
one
without
and the
saying.
same here, so I don't know whether that ends up nullifying that or.
We could acknowledge that in a very brief letter and indicate that although we were major contributors to the pulling the plan together and in the form of our agent, that we wholeheartedly support it.
And unanimously, because that is.
Support the
also-
goals and objectives.
Right, and the text, in the document itself.
Yeah.
Because I think that is the case, so yes, Brent, if you could write
Okay.
such a letter, we can send it along. All right. So let's see, we're not quite to 8:30. Mr. DeCoulis, you expecting, I can actually ask Brent, we're not expecting anyone else here on your matter,
I
right?
don't think
No.
so.
Horsley Witten's not going to be here,
No.
presumably, okay,
No, they considered the comment letter
right,
that they wrote
the last.
capable of standing on its own, and yeah, in the last review at this point in time.
So the last letter we have from them is May 12th, right?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think that passed, yeah.
I can't vote.
I get to see you, John.
So this is the 8:30 item, continued notice of intent for land off Daniels Road, map 9, parcel 23, Tompkins Desjardins Trust, Bruce Tompkins trustee.
Yeah.
Proposed construction of 6 duplex dwellings with associated roadway, et cetera, possibly within the 100-foot buffer zone. Mr. DeCoulis?
I was hoping to have a response to Haley and Horsley and Witten,
Uh-huh.
but we got hung up on details on the chapter 61. Well, first of all, the land that the trust owns is under chapter 61. It's a forestry restriction, and there are certain procedures on withdrawing from that. So the trust has had their attorney, and I've been working with them on how to best to do that. So I don't have the response for Horsley and Witten, but I will have it next week.
Okay.
And that's about where that stands.
So you were working on that, so you didn't quite get this finished, is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Right.
So as I recall, when we last met probably 3 weeks ago, the 2 areas where further detail was looked for was infiltration basin number 1
Right,
and culverts associated with the driveways.
right.
So, okay.
And they've addressed that, and I think they favorably have reviewed it, but I've still got a few things to clear up on it.
Okay. I think the only other 2 very minor things mentioned in their letter were a clear statement in the operation and maintenance plan that snow is not to be placed in the infiltration basins, so
Right.
if you can just remember to put that in.
Right,
And signature of the property owner.
Yes, yeah.
on the illicit discharge statement. Okay, so what do you think, 3 weeks?
right.
Okay.
But I don't know if you've got time this evening to kind of go over the notice of intent, if there are any last-minute hitches in it.
Well, I actually have some questions if.
Yeah,
we
sure.
can,
Yeah.
we
Okay.
can discuss the
I mean,
project.
it's here, so.
Well, in regards to, the basins have been reconfigured and we've been given a more detailed plan, but actually culverts under the driveways was not addressed.
Right,
And Horsley and Witten stated that your plans continue to not show culverts being provided. and-
Right.
And in fact, that they result in an approximate 9-inch impoundment between each driveway. And their recommendation is that the commission condition that culverts under the driveway be
Mhm.
required with the specification that I believe they are capable of a capacity of the 10-year event, I think, was their specification on it.
Is that the direction you're
yes.
going to
yeah.
go, is
Right,
to include the culverts?
right.
So, if I may, on
apologize for putting this upside down to the commission, but I was wondering if Mr. DeCoulis could just explain, is there any flow, any overflow, emergency spillway, anything like that involved in what I believe you're calling infiltration basin number 1, which is at the frontage where the Marion Way roadway intersects with Daniels Road? I'm having a hard time understanding how the subsurface perforated pipe, if the capacity of that is exceeded, I'm not picking up a detail on here as to where, if the basin overflows, where it goes.
Well, first of all, we've designed it for the 100-year flood,
Okay.
so we don't expect any overflow for.
In my lifespan here in 2006, though, we had the double,
Well,
back to back in 48 hours.
that was not
Event, so-
the classic 100-year storm.
Oh, I understand, but I think everything we're seeing on the weather reports now and everything the scientists are telling us is not to expect and not to be complacent.
Well, there is water flowing from the property onto Daniels Road right now.
Right. So if that basin and those subsurface pipes all fill up, I'm just simply asking the question, where is it gonna go? Is it directed to go in a certain area?
It'll flow onto Daniels Road.
Okay, so it won't go on to Mr.
That's
the
correct.
abutter Tremblay's
Right.
property?
Right.
Which is what you're saying is that's what it would do now. It would
Exactly,
continue
yeah.
to do that, except now it'll be engineered for the 100-year flood
Right.
as opposed to.
I mean, I just don't expect any, ever, any flow.
Well, and that's fine, I just wanted.
Yeah.
I just
And
wanted to
as
ask
a
that
matter of
question.
fact, I don't have the figures with me, but the peak elevation at the 100-year storm is, I believe, 1.5 feet below the peak of the top of the basin.
Okay, all right.
So it's, you're at.
So there's some additional capacity in the
Capacity,
ba- in the-
exactly,
in the
right,
basin, and
yeah,
that will be
right,
utilized
yeah.
Before it overflows, okay.
3 destroyed bridges, would be happy to sell you.
I'm sorry, Kurt?
We have 3 destroyed bridges in town, we'd be happy to sell you.
Oh, yeah.
We're not engineered for that.
So another comment that I have that arose, you don't really need to get up for this one technically, John. You provide a detail on the erosion control of showing both the filter sock, and you also show siltation fence and hay bales. What you don't show for the filter sock is the method for securing it in place.
I think those are just staked in place.
Well, but you don't, your detail does not
Does not
give
sh-
any clue
Okay.
as to how that gets
I'll have to call.
secured in place, so.
I forget their name, and right over the border in New Hampshire.
Yeah, probably the same people I'm thinking of that I actually have on my to-do list to give an inquiry to. Now, okay, so the reason that I kind of highlighted that a little bit or talked about that, and I apologize, I think I have to get the correct plan here. Come on in, come on in. Same room, different door.
Yeah, it's okay.
So, in reviewing the stormwater pollution prevention plan, you probably picked up on the fact that recent changes in EPA's standards require, for lack of a better term, beefed up erosion control if there's less than a 50-foot undisturbed vegetative cover to the edge of a wetland resource area.
Right, yeah.
I.e., if your erosion control is positioned such that it is closer than 50 feet, EPA standards now require additional quote-unquote treatment, so to speak, Yet you've proposed none on your plans.
Um,
And I believe, in order to meet that standard, because I ran into the same thing down here with the Village Green project on Main Street, from approximately wetlands flag halfway between number 7 and 8, where the 12-inch filter sock, you've delineated the 50-foot buffer zone, and you show the filter sock now closer than 50 feet, starting halfway between flags 7 and 8, and proceeding for all intents and purposes, except for a small section that's right on the 50-foot line. We then for sure go back to being closer than 50 feet, starting at wetlands flag number 14, and proceeding all the way down to wetlands flag number 25. I believe you need to specify or consider the possible use of silt fence with the filter sock in order to achieve compliance, because pretty much that whole length, you're 25 feet. So therefore, you don't have the 50-foot undisturbed vegetative surface cover till you get to the wetland resource area. So I wanted to briefly mention that. I also
Is
wanted...
that under the wetland regs or the stormwater regs?
those are
Well,
the
technically the
EPA.
stormwater, but there's no reason why we should, ignore that, since that's, the advancing experience, and since it's a requirement of the EPA, we should issue a permit that's in concert with their requirements, and not a permit that sets up possible confusion by it not being adhering to the same standards that are applied through the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan or the NIFTI's permit or construction general permit.
So what the standards say, regardless of any method that you use, you've got to use a double method.
Yes,
I understand you correctly.
yes, because there isn't enough undisturbed vegetative surface cover to supplement and to reduce turbidity or transported fine sediments and things like that. So-
Erosion.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
as well as erosion too. Well, none of those things we want. So moving on from the discussion about that, but still kind of talking about this edge of the project, we had a discussion about Lot 1 and Lot 2, where you repositioned the limit of disturbance to allow more undisturbed buffer zone, especially where we become adjacent to the residential dwelling that's on the abutting property, who we mentioned earlier. I believe it's owned by the Tremblings.
Tremblay, yeah.
And you had mentioned that you were designating that as being an open space area. On the commission's behalf, I want to ask you if you're amenable to that being an increased with no cut, no disturbance zone. If that's gonna be designated as open space, is there any reason why we shouldn't request, since it's regulated buffer zone, is there any reason why we shouldn't request that we expand the width of the no cut, no disturbance zone to protect that forest?
I
in the
don't see
buffer zone?
why not.
I mean, since being quote-unquote your open space,
Right,
you certainly are not gonna direct any future development
that's right,
activities in.
yeah.
So if the commission is in agreement with that, I would request that his depiction of the no cut, no disturbance line, that be pulled up to the erosion control line, pretty much starting on, let's see if I can get it where it exactly is here. Starting basically at the rear of Lot 3 and Lots 2 and Lot 1, all the way to the boundary line adjacent to 53 Daniels Road.
That seems logical.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
We've possibly asked this question before, so please bear with me if I'm asking a redundant question. The property boundary lines, can you, for my edification, explain to me why this line turns into a dashed line and what that means? So I see that lot 6 here, I'm assuming this is the property boundary to it. And it goes up and it slices through a third of your basin number 2. Who owns the rest of basin number 2? Is there a lot that it's included in? Is it?
No.
Who owns it?
Well,
Or who will own it? Or, I understand Tompkins Desjardins Trust right now owns it,
right.
but obviously there needs to be an easement created here. But who's gonna own? Whose property will that easement be on?
Oh, eventually if the town accepts it, it'll be the town's.
Yeah, but for the easement, but it's on somebody's, there's gonna be some ownership of that parcel. It's unclear to me where that parcel is. Is that parcel now part of the contiguous Tompkins Desjardins Trust
No.
parcel that's over here on the
I
other
think-
side of the stream? See, because your line, your property boundary line goes to being dashed. And I'm unclear what that means. Normally, you've been using solid lot lines.
Right.
Maybe you can get back to us at the next meeting as
I'll
to
have-
how
I'll
the
have to-
ownership
I'll
puzzle.
have to study that.
Okay.
That's gonna be a separate parcel with the idea of giving it to the town, then you're going to need easements through one of those other places to get to it.
Yeah, it's just confusing at this time how the lot ownership, rather this piece got missed here.
Okay.
It seems more likely it would go with one of the lots.
Yes.
but, you know,
Yeah, originally, we had this kind
Right.
of dog leg or whatever, but now it looks like there's possibly this chunk. Or either that or I'm reading too much into that dashed line.
Well,
Dashed line should be explained. Key.
okay, let me review that and I'll give you a report on it.
Okay.
What lot is that?
6.
6.
Yeah, it seems like between lot 5 and lot 6, there's this possible no man's land that maybe.
Right. Which is probably
Got
not the
that.
intention. I would think that's not the best way to do it. Yeah, okay. Good question.
And of course, Horsley and Witten commented about the reach and that stuff being taken off your plan since you
Right, right.
redesigned the basin.
Yeah.
So thank you for your patience. Just a few things here. So one further question that I didn't understand. In the stormwater pollution prevention plan, when we get into the category about fueling and maintenance of equipment or vehicles, you talk about fueling activities will be located adjacent to sediment basin 6B. Can you tell me where 6B is? Because I couldn't find 6B anywhere. I realize this may not be the right plan for the identification, but,
There's 6A.
right, I found 6A.
I believe that's 6B. It's the, oh, here it is here, sediment trap 6B.
Okay.
I have probably the best thing to do is move the note down here where you can read it easier.
Okay, well, actually, it was leading me to ask you, why is that area selected for fueling and maintenance and equipment of vehicles? Is that the anticipated location of a construction trailer or something? Or
or sometimes they use these steel shipping units as their sort of base of operation, so they can lock up their tools and stuff is,
Container.
yeah, container, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
shipping
it's, I chose it because it's almost in the middle of the road.
So
So
reachable from either
Exactly.
end of the project?
Exactly.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, great, thank you very much. That was the only.
Yeah, and if you move that 6 feet down to the white space, that'd probably be easier for the next person looking for it. All right, anything else, Brett?
Well, okay.
Not, just the notation, not the lot.
Now, I was gonna ask if it was possible to review the notice of intent.
That's what this was.
Yeah.
That's
well-
what I'm doing.
Okay, all right, I meant the actual physical notice.
Okay. Actually, we do,
That's a bill. The lower bid.
well, since you brought that up, that does bring up the slightly confusing completion of the stormwater report, where you listed this notice of intent as the applicant being Bruce Tompkins, Tompkins Desjardins Trust. And then you left the property ownership blank, indicating that the applicant was the owner.
Right.
And yet, the stormwater pollution prevention plan that you have filled out and submitted as part of the stormwater report, you list, I'm sorry, what?
Build America.
Yeah, Build America with, and you have a Thomas Frangone,
Frangus, yeah.
Frangus, as being the signature, signing as owner. And that doesn't seem to be the case unless something's happened here.
No, I think what happened was that we made this out first before we, Mr. Frangus came on board.
But you've been before the ZBA for
ZBA.
like a whole year and a half prior to coming
that's
to the
true.
commission.
Yeah, you know, you're right, that's true. Well, we'll have to modify the notice of intent.
Well, you say legal counsel is working on a possible transitioning from chapter 61. I'm assuming that means because there's a potential change of ownership here. But at this point in time, is the Tompkins Desjardins Trust the owner of this
Yes, you're right,
geographic
right, you're right.
extent of the project?
Yeah,
Okay. So, but I'm taking you anticipate a change soon. Do you anticipate a change before we've consummated?
no,
the possible
I
issuance
don't
of an
believe
order?
so. I don't believe so. No, that 61, chapter 61, the trust is gonna apply for the withdrawal.
Mhm.
They're gonna file an application with the Board of Selectmen, and it'll all be in the trust's name.
So the present stormwater pollution prevention plan that you've submitted with Thomas Frangone as signing as owner then is incorrect.
Is he signed as the owner or the
That's what he
applicant?
says. He says title, owner.
Well, I don't understand that. Because he's not the owner.
Okay. Then I think that page possibly needs to be corrected at this point in time
Okay.
until the ownership changes.
John, on that chapter 61 withdrawal, does that involve paying taxes back to the town?
Oh, yes, right. I think there's 5 years of back taxes. And the assessors have to eventually, I believe what happens, the assessors sign off on it, and then that gets recorded at the registry of deeds.
You know, John, I'll have to go through this. I reviewed this when you initially submitted it, and that's when we got into all the discussion about the fee calculations and stuff.
Right.
I'll have to review it again, but I don't believe anything else in regards to it.
No, what I was concerned about mainly was the riverfront area. I submitted some photographs, and I don't know if we've ever discussed it.
Well, I think we did, because I believe the commission had me do a file review for past history of the filings, and
I know the question came up at one meeting.
Right, my
And that-
impression was that I believe I had tracked the history and the documentation that, I'll have to go back and look, it's been quite a while, because I
Yeah.
was back almost now, a whole year ago.
At least, right.
Right,
We had a discussion about the status of the stream, is that?
right.
Right,
That's what I'm
right,
remembering too, but I don't remember much detail.
right. Well, and then the next meeting, I submitted photographs,
Yeah.
and I believe, Brent, you met with Greg Bernard, who works with me you met him out there once?
Well, yeah, but I'm not sure that that had anything to do with doing an analysis of stream flow or anything, though.
I thought it did. Well, anyway, let's, we'll have to review that,
Yeah.
clear that up.
Well, I think we can all look at our notes for the next meeting, and I think that's
Yeah.
probably, it seems like we all remember having some discussions.
Well, I have a recollection of, with a past filing, where we're up in this area where
Of researching the past filings. Yeah, that-
researching the past filings, but also getting involved with looking at the stream channel and noting it being dry in a period of time that was not a declared
Right,
drought.
right.
um,
I believe that's correct. I just wanted
Right.
to make sure that
Yeah,
I was remembering it correctly.
Yeah, I just don't remember the
I'll
details of that.
have to review that to, refresh my recollection.
Did this go wind up in the courts, and the courts?
That was another one.
Yeah,
But
that was
that
another
was
case.
that was further
Downstream.
downstream, but my recollection is that this upstream portion, we didn't have any problems with the criteria or whatever, in regards to its status as being intermittent, based on the fact that we were observing a dry channel with no flow.
Well, that's the part I don't remember, is what conclusion we reached.
Yeah,
I remember
right.
talking about it, but then we kind of moved on.
Yeah,
These
and that's the way I
issues.
remember it too, Doug, yeah.
So, okay, so we'll talk about that the next meeting too.
Yeah.
Okay. So anything else you wanna add, Brent?
No, I just
Keep saying 3 weeks and then you keep saying, well, just 1 minute.
Well, no, I think.
So I don't wanna do that again. Okay, all right, so 3 weeks?
Right.
So that's June 17th, I think.
Okay.
Is that right?
And like I said, I
Yeah.
hope to finish the response to Horsley and Witten next week,
Sure.
so we should have a report from them also.
Yep, and we will discuss the, well, I guess it'll just be sort of the general notice of intent issues that we were just talking about, as well as any leftover issues, and there were 4 or 5 things Brent just brought up
Right.
for discussion, so those will all be on next meeting. All right, so is there a motion to continue this to the June 17th, 2014 hearing?
So moved.
Meeting? And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. See you in 3 weeks.
Yep.
That's the thing with the kids, right?
Band, concerts, soccer.
Gotta go everywhere.
Oh my God, it's making a noise. And it smells like oil. Oh my God. A few more weeks will be pretty much over. Just, end of the year.
From Scotland. She's back from there, but she's going off to Ghana next week.
Oh, nice.
You get extra points if you even know where Ghana is.
It's Africa. How long is she going to be there?
8 weeks.
For,
Ghana is in West Africa. That's part of her.
Near
Part of her
Gambia,
education.
isn't it near Gambia?
Yes, sort of. Sort of near Liberia, sort of
Yeah.
near,
Liberia.
but it's
Yeah,
not,
towards
it's not war torn.
Camel country.
Yeah. Traveling. They speak English there now. They're actually, their official
English.
language is English, interestingly. Because they were a British colony, and they were a colony, so English is what they were raised on.
There used to be something else in the
No.
name, because I cannot keep track of the name changes.
I know.
That's what it's-
Right, and I think they've been gone for a long time. They call themselves Ghanaians. 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 All right, this is the,
Well, the next items are
Yep.
administrative.
yep,
Um,
so
We do have,
who do we have?
Mr. Pancos is here in attendance for
For,
the 9 o'clock certificate of compliance for
okay,
262 Main Street.
all right. Well, let's do that then. So it's the 9 o'clock item. It's the new request for certificate of compliance, 63-449 for 262 Main Street, map 24 parcel or lot 83. Jason and Catherine Montero. There's a replacement of a sewage disposal system in 2004. I think we have the memo, or is this one we don't have a memo?
No,
we
you
have a
do
memo.
have a
We do have a
memo,
memo.
There is.
Yeah.
as
Have-
well
have you
as
seen the
the
memo?
communication.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, all sorts of pictures and stuff. Oh, yeah.
All right. So you are,
My name is David Pancoast. I am the husband of the buyer of this property.
Okay.
And I live at 22 Elm Street rear, unit number 1 in Ipswich. I also was the conservation agent in Ipswich for 13 years. I just retired on February 28th.
I thought I knew your name
Interactive.
from somewhere.
I've interacted with Mr. Bazelak many, many times.
Okay.
We have a good age, a great age.
We think so too.
But they ain't gonna get you a permit.
And I'm sure Mr. Bazelak will address these points, but the formalities for the COC, I believe, have been met.
That's what it looks like.
But there was an open house on this property on May 10th, my wife asked me to attend, not for conservation purposes, but just to look at the house, because I agree have houses as a sideline. And we got there a little bit early, so we wandered into the backyard, and there's a border vegetated wetlands there. And very close to the wetlands, I didn't have any maps or anything with me, but very close to the wetlands, within inches, there was a mounded area of yard debris. And so I immediately knew, after 17 years of doing this type of work, that we had a violation potential there, but I didn't have any of the facts to know if you folks were aware of it or not. Also, some of the material had been burned on the ground. So I advised my wife and her realtor, she has a buyer's realtor, I advised them of that potential situation, so I didn't have any facts, but I would bring it to the attention of this commission at some point. And she decided actually that day to make an offer, being aware of that potential violation. She made an offer, it was accepted. And it became clear when the realtor did her due diligence, it became clear that the order conditions had never been filed, that no COC had issued, and that there were some requirements in that order related to your no cut, no disturb zone posts and signage. So there were no posts there, and I knew that. She took those materials to the seller's attorney. He recorded the order conditions, so I don't know if you've seen my letter of yesterday, but that I gave to Mr. Bazelak this morning, but the first item on my plan is that the OLC needed to be recorded, was never recorded, and he has ascertained that it has been recorded. So that item's been dealt with. The second item related to signage, posts, no cut, no disturb zone. They weren't put in, and they have been put in by the current owner, so I believe that matter's been attended to. And the third item was that the current owner was unaware of the no cut, no disturb zone because the prior owner had never marked it. So in light of that, they mistakenly deposited some yard waste in the area that I just spoke to you about. And he has removed that material. So the first three items are taken care of. The fourth one is that there was supposed to be that no cut, no disturb zone markers, and respecting that area from that line, which if you look at your plan in front of you, the line is very close to the toe of the slope that resulted from the raised septic system that was installed. And the posts have been installed, according to Mr. Bazelak. I haven't been to the site, but I'm sure he's correct in terms of where they were placed and so forth. My wife wants to do the right thing, and it's a violation, and the present owner has removed the materials, but he has not, I'll say, restored that disturbed area, and also he was mowing that strip of lawn, which is probably 30 to 40 feet wide and anywhere from 8 to 10 feet, 30 to 40 feet long and 8 to 10 feet wide. And it does vary because the wetlands are a straight line, of course. So Patricia Silvestro is the buyer, she's my wife, and she is very interested in presenting you folks the mitigation restoration plan that will satisfy your requirements and will allow her to get her certificate of compliance in time for the June 30th closing. We're hoping that you can approve this evening. The elements of the plan, again, I don't know if you've had the letter, but it's on page 3.
They were just presented.
Just presented,
tonight,
okay.
So I have it in front of them.
I'll just kind of go through them quickly then, if that's okay with everybody. You can ask me any questions you want. Again, he continued to mow this strip of lawn area, and also did not restore the area that he had disturbed with the mounded yard debris. So Patricia, as buyer, understands the violation, even though it wasn't her that committed it. She is willing to conduct the requisite mitigation and restoration of the entire area within that 100-foot wide buffer zone and within your no cut, no disturb zone, to include cessation of all mowing and maintenance of the disturbed area and the adjacent strip of lawn inside the no cut, no disturb zone. She will cease mowing as of the date that she acquires the property, which is June 30th. I'm not sure, but Mr. Bazelak probably talked to the current owner about not mowing it anymore, but I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he may address that later. But she will stop mowing it as of the date of her closing. And she also offers to scratch the surface of the disturbed area by hand raking and spreading an acceptable conservation mix in that area, which is westerly of the rear yard, the rear lawn strip below the mounted septic system. And she also is willing to turn the lawn over in the existing strip of lawn within the no-cut, no-disturb zone, and then plant not less than 30 native blackberry plants inside the entire no-cut, no-disturb zone from property line to property line, and from the toe of the Title V raised system to the edge of wetlands. For habitat enhancement, the birds and animals will eat the berries, and she will, of course, as well. And the growth of those plants will also provide suitable improved ground cover and enhanced habitat for ground-dwelling species as well. And as Mr. Bazai pointed out in his memo to you, there is no particular evidence in that immediate area of any high canopy or even small saplings. But it is a disturbed area, so she's presenting to plant, to replace herbaceous species with blackberries, again, for the enhancement purposes. And I do want to make one additional request with respect to that, is that she would like to be able to plant one red maple, which is Acer rubrum. It's a native species in Massachusetts that does very well with wet feet. And she'd like to plant at least one sapling with a 1-inch caliper. If the commission doesn't want that, that's fine. She's not rigid on that, but she'd like to be able to do that if you're in accord. And she agrees again not to mow that entire strip of lawn, below the no-cut, no-disturb zone, and not to allow any others to disturb it on her behalf. And she agrees to ensure the ongoing vitality of all the blackberry plantings and the red maple if you allow it, including replacing any failed plants that need to be replaced for a period of 2 calendar years of full growing seasons after they are planted by her this summer. So it would be the partial growing season of this summer and the 2 full growing seasons of 2015, 2016. And the planting and conservation mix seeding will be conducted by me on her behalf, not later than July 31st of 2014, or probably sooner. And then she will submit annual pictorial evidence of the plantings and the vitality of the area and its non-disturbed status going forward with a written summary of this year's partial growing season and the next 2 full growing seasons. And that will be submitted within 30 days of the end of each successive growing season. And I propose to you that you deem October 15th to be the end of the growing season. And all my time on the North Shore, which has been 14 years, the November 15th date is just too late in my opinion, but we'll go with whatever date you folks want. And then within 30 days after whatever date you choose to assert for the end of the growing season, she will present a written report with that pictorial evidence to your agent, and I will prepare those for her. I will do the monitoring, and I will also do those plantings and so forth. And lastly, under H, she will conduct any further or other mitigation or restoration requirements that you may decide to set or may desire. And I guess I would just need to see what they would be and we could go from there.
Where exactly is 262 Main Street? What's near it?
Right across from the first entrance to Todd
Todd
Farm,
Farm.
as you're going north toward Newbury.
Okay.
Nondescript ranch house, single story, that's right next to the one that the past applicant just converted recently to Brian.
Thank you.
Did the work for Bobby.
This process,
Yeah.
Hughes.
Hughes, yes, Mr. Hughes.
this process does Patricia a favor in a sense because she does not want to have to mow the lawn. So giving up that strip is no imposition on her whatsoever.
I'm just sort of intrigued by the idea of using blackberries.
Yeah.
I started off a number of years ago with one cane that I bought at the
Oh,
Historical
yes, yeah.
Society sale.
Yep,
I have probably an acre of blackberries. They're very hard to maintain.
Okay.
The fruit is wonderful, but
Yeah.
there are a lot of there's a lot of downside to
Okay,
blackberries.
I acknowledge
I
that.
think about it carefully.
I acknowledge that,
If you don't take the canes out, it doesn't look very
Exactly.
good.
yeah,
And so you end up having a lot of work
well,
that you might
I mean,
not.
they climb out in the lawn.
Right.
They're-
You know,
Oh,
they migrate as well.
oh.
Your cars will
Thank
be
you for
covered with
stating
fruit.
my opinion.
It was an unusual, I mean, it's a native species.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't
She
argue
has,
with you, but
she's not locked in on blackberries, I
Okay.
understand.
I mean, I'm not saying she can't do it, but
No.
I
I hear you.
She's
I have,
welcome
at
to.
the end of the letter, I defined
yeah,
failed species because canes die off every year.
right,
So
right.
typically she'd wanna remove those and take them off site, not allow them to improve because that would
Right.
end up filling that area
Yeah, it doesn't
over
look.
time.
And then there are the thorns.
Yeah, there are thorns, but, you know, again, it's maybe some, but if you're concerned about them spreading,
No, not at all.
No,
I mean,
I'm just
they're a native
concerned
species.
yeah, it is a native
You know,
species, but they
they
do
do-
spread.
Or
They do, but that's fine, if it's okay.
inviting a problem.
My thought on the red maple is that would make a lot of sense. I don't know what you think, Brent, but I think something taller in there might look good and make for a better balanced.
It'll ultimately
Yard.
shade that wetland a little bit too.
Mhm. Yeah.
Some nice phragmites.
I'd be pleased to punch if everybody responded with an appropriate restoration plan such as this anytime.
Yeah, I don't, other than, I mean, I don't think we would not permit blackberries and a red maple. I think you were unwise to want them, but that doesn't mean we wouldn't permit them. That's my thought. Um, Anybody?
In Mr. Montero's defense, Mr. Montero had no
He was not
knowledge.
the applicant, right?
Well, first off, you have to remember here, the original applicant, who more than likely did a Title V inspection because of an impending sale of the property and discovered they needed to put in a replacement system, they basically hamstrung the whole process by failing to record the original order.
Mhm.
And so wherever in the chain of property ownership, the Monteros being the most recent owner, wherever they fell, they had no way of gaining
Right.
knowledge through either title exam or anything short of coming down to the Conservation Commission office and asking about it, because this was technically concealed. This was relatively recent, 2004, I believe is the.
3, I think. Oh, well, no, the permit,
I think the permit was
4.
issued in 2004, I was gonna say.
the application was 3.
But there's a couple of things we kind of need to touch on, because in a sense, this is sort of waiver city here. I hate to use that word, but there's just various things going on now. So the core thought here is that they got a permit for a replacement septic system, and the commission required them to create a no-cut, no-disturbance zone. These lots along this particular section of Main Street in this area on the opposite side from the Todd Farm location have all historically been filled in order to develop the lots. They all have a very immediate bordering vegetated wetlands to the rear, sometimes at the base of the toe of the slope of the fill, as in the Hughes right next door, or in this situation, the terrain apparently had a more gradual slope and transitioned into bordering vegetated wetlands. So, be that as it may, when I found the plan and was alerted to the situation, produced a recommended production of a true and attested copy of the order, which was recorded. I examined the plan, the final approved plan that was in the commission's file, and compared it to the Board of Health's as-built plan. The Board of Health's as-built plan did not have anything at all about posts or the no-cut, no-disturbance line. So one thing I need to bring up at this point in time, though, is that not having anything else to go by, I went by the plan that was in the commission's file. It should be noted here, though, that the condition
was phrased as follows: a variable width 17-foot minimum, no cut, no disturbance zone demarcated on the approved site plan shall be maintained to protect the wetland from the effects of the development. The problem is, this plan, which showed the post locations and showed the boundary of the no cut, no disturb, is less than 17 feet off the closest wetland flag.
I was gonna ask you that.
17 feet went to the erosion control, which obviously is no longer in evidence,
Right.
as well as the fact that what was supposed to be a retaining wall, there may be a retaining wall, but they put, I believe, the excavated material, which I tried the diagram on here, and you can tell from the photographs. The only visible retaining wall is this projection right here on the westerly side of the property. And it steps down right to the edge of where I believe, via these measurements, which I sort of triangulated it, where the no cut, no disturb posts were configured to go. So when faced with text and a stamped plan, I went with the stamped plan. And I, as you can see, scaled off from known points and assisted Mr. Montero with choosing in the field where I believe the relatively approximate location of these posts would be. These photographs documented that the posts are in place and they're solidly, they're 36 or more inches down into the ground. They don't, I can lean on them, they don't fall over. But they also, in a sense, match how this depiction was on the plan, which is now where the toe of slope. So this erosion control as a limit of work wasn't adhered to. The boulders are down. And I think I tried to take a picture. Yeah, there's a picture showing the boulders. So you see how the retaining wall that's exposed comes down, and the boulders are right there. And that's a stick I stuck in when I triangulated this particular center post. So the posts have been installed as their depiction on the final approved plan. I believe what it results in is a variable width, no cut, no disturb, because these wetland flags were in quite a distance, over 25 feet off. This area here ends up being an approximate 10 to 12 foot offset from where the wetlands was delineated. It matches up to where the lawn is existing there now.
Right.
And so,
The discrepancy is 17 feet. You can't get 17 feet out of that without
right,
changing.
and it wouldn't have made sense
Right.
to put that fill and the boulder retaining wall in the no cut, no disturb, because then it wouldn't have been a no cut, no disturb if you were filling it and putting boulders in it. As well as it would interrupt the hydrology or whatever for, the idea was to get a transitionary plant community transitioning into the bordering vegetated wetlands at that spot. And so, as long as the commission is amenable with going with the plan, I apologize for not being able to consult with you ahead of time, but again, I kind of deferred to the final approved plan when it's stamped by an engineer. I figured that the commission must have discussed that at their meeting when they issued the permit. Maybe the intent was that area was going to be so minuscule that it would have been subject to a lot of manipulation, but they specifically showed the posts, and so that's where I advised the current property owner to put the post as best we
Can I
could.
ask a question, Mr. Chairman? Are the posts essentially where they were ordered to be, or are they?
As per the plan.
Yeah.
Although, because I don't have survey accuracy for the side boundary lines, we deferred and pulled in, as well as there's one heck of a multiflora rose bush growth, and I wasn't gonna have him hack through the thorns.
just to put a post in that
No,
would
I-
be covered by the plan.
You told me about that,
Yeah.
but basically.
And on the other side, again, because I didn't want to be telling somebody to install a post which might be on somebody else's property, we pulled it in
Right.
a couple of feet in order to make sure that it was on their property and not on somebody else's.
But if she respects the resulting line, the no cut, no
Exactly,
disturb line.
yeah,
And does her restoration below that line toward the wetlands,
right.
that should fulfill the commission's.
Right. But in your memo, Brent, the perpetual and ongoing conditions, should we be saying a variable with 17-foot minimum no-cut zone? Because that's not really what the plan and the posts now depict.
Well, right, and that's why we're having this meeting. I can only go by,
Yeah.
you know, before I start changing things from a previously issued
Okay.
order, I wanted to have this discussion before I start, you know, taking any editorial license.
No, I understand, and we just don't want to put that into, as a condition of the order,
Well, exactly.
with those words.
And
with
so
that word.
basically, if you strike the 17-foot and just leave it as a variable width, no cut, no disturbance zone, we will.
Demarcated on the approved site plan.
Right,
Yes, exactly.
but I wanted to, again, just let you know my thought process and
No, it
make
makes
sure
sense.
that you felt the
Makes
same
sense.
way about the plan that I felt.
And just to offer this point to the commission, Patricia is willing and wants to restore everything from the toe slope to wetlands. So actually probably a little bit
Yeah. so the-
outside the no cut, no disturb line, possibly at least on one corner, I think. It kind of angles across the lot, as I understand the plan.
Yeah, well, and see, if you choose not to cut that and not disturb it,
Yeah.
then that's okay. You could do that with your whole lawn if you wanted to. We're just saying that in terms of the commission's authority and the issued permit, that we're looking for those posts to be
Right.
showing the boundary.
All right, so commissioners, any comments?
No.
So essentially, this is something I don't think we've ever done before, which is essentially say to a buyer that they can do the restoration plan. So, but this would seem to be the perfect situation in which to do it.
Well, as I say, the regulations don't say that
You can,
you can't.
no, you just never have.
And certainly it, again, under our bylaw, this is, you know, this activity is mostly being commenced in the buffer zone, which the Wetlands Protection Act is totally silent about. Under our bylaw, this certainly, I think, in any type of permitting situation, I think the commission would be very amenable, and I would certainly be of the professional opinion that habitat enhancement, if it isn't good in a no cut, no disturbance zone that's been inadvertently impacted, where is it good?
Oh, that's right.
I have one other question, Mr. Chairman, when it's
Mhm.
appropriate. I put in that provision about turning the lawn over because I find that blackberries will do fine on the lawn, but other things like the conservation mix won't do that great. The lawn is there now, and it's very well established. If the commission has concerns about that, I could either turn some of the sod over upside down between the edge of the wetlands line and the area that we're going to plant, or I can not turn it over at all, and I just wanted to let you know that we're willing to do it either way.
Well, I mean, it's a lot of lawn there. I suppose that would raise some erosion concerns.
Yeah, that's why I said that if, I offered that if we turn over the sod nearest to the wetlands and leave it on top of the existing lawn, that'll create a little berm that nothing will get into that wetlands. That's organic soils there.
Yeah. Your thoughts, Brent? Any commissioners have a thought on that? So her intention is basically to just let it go. And
The conservation mix, and maybe if you also could, if you're gonna word it for the certificate of compliance, maybe it could be worded that, and I'll talk to her about the blackberries, and maybe I could work with your agent on some substitutions that are acceptable.
just for her own protection.
I understand. Understood.
I don't know, I don't really have a feeling about turning over the lawn.
There's hardly any slope there, there's
Yeah.
not really going to be, and you may be able to even things out by addressing, there still may be an excess accumulation of organic material in the pile. He has removed the noticeable material on where it was previously being used as a landscape, a yard trimming pile.
As I stated in the letter I submitted, we're prepared to remove whatever material he may not have gotten out.
Sure.
We wanna do it right. Off the site, of course.
So I guess my feeling, just as one member, is go ahead and turn the lawn over. I think that the risks, the environmental risks are minimal. It'll just get back to the state you want quite a lot faster that way.
Right, which is part of the reason to do it. I also will be monitoring it so that if I see erosion problems, I'm gonna take care of those right away and I'll inform Brett.
I would leave like an undisturbed strip. And
Yeah.
then whatever you end up planting will
Yeah.
overtake it at some
Yeah.
point in time.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, we
So
could.
I would, so a downgrading portion, I would leave an undisturbed strip, turn the other stuff over and do the seeding.
Any idea
And
of
let
the
it
strip width?
naturalize.
Should it be a foot, 2 feet, 3 feet?
God,
It's not that
you
wide.
don't- It's not that wide, you don't have much material that's gonna be there. I'd say you could leave 8 inches, spade width,
A foot or 8 to 12 inches.
8 to 12 inches, yeah.
That's fine.
Makes sense. It looks like a well-established lawn.
It's very well suited.
Of course, they all look that way this time of year, still.
Having walked on it, I can assure you it's pretty well established.
Oh,
Examined it.
Getting maintained for a long
Yeah.
time.
all right, so,
So my suggestion, just so
Yeah.
we don't get involved in putting a lot of details in the possible issues of the certificate of compliance, is that we simply state in the findings that a proposed restoration plan for the impacted no-cut, no-disturb and associated vegetated wetlands will be submitted to the office for review and approval for consummation of such restoration by whatever the date was you said, what was it, July or something?
July
like that?
31st,
July
well,
31st.
she would end it, she would do it by then. She doesn't
Right.
acquire the property until June 30th. so-
Right.
Right.
do you think that's enough time? Yeah, well, it probably is. She has you working for her, so you'll get right on it.
We'll get right on it.
Yeah, so, okay. So July 30th makes sense.
And other than that, we'll just strike the dimension 17.
Right.
And are you folks comfortable with October 15th as the end of growing season, so
Yeah.
that reports will be in by the 15th of November?
Sure. That makes sense, Brent?
Yeah, to be honest with you, lots of times I tell folks to do their review at the end of September, so
Right.
that nursery stock is still available,
Yeah.
because I've usually found that the ones that have been later in October sometimes run into the situation that then they can't find replacement
Want
plants
to change that
available.
to September 30th, or?
Well, here again, you're gonna be responsible for those details, we're gonna
Okay,
just
You know,
phrase it
Yeah.
that it'll have to be reviewed and approved by the office, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
that'll
It-
keep
I
it
mean,
out
if-
of this.
If it needs replacing, you'll be on it before then, so.
yes, we will.
Right,
I don't want to run afoul of conservation.
no, and you also don't wanna you don't wanna get to
Right.
Corliss and find out they don't have any.
That's exactly.
Right. Okay, so I think this would just be a motion to issue a complete certificate of compliance with the 2 listed conditions and approval of the discussed restoration plan, as discussed.
Yeah.
Is there a motion to that effect? So moved. And a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All against? Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Welcome to Raleigh.
Is it okay if I exit this room? Good night.
Good night. This is yours.
Thank you.
This is yours. Sabatini.
Mr. Sabatini
Okay,
is
let's
here
do-
in
let's do you
attendance.
Since you're waiting. So this is the item listed at 9:30 on the agenda, enforcement order of land off Main Street, Lot A, map 26, parcel 26, Lot 1, Michael A. Sabatini, land owned by town of Rowley, altering bordering vegetated wetlands and buffer zone by cutting and clearing vegetation on the Brad Street Farm Conservation Area. Mr. Sabatini, want to come forward? All right, Brent, you want to bring us up to date on this?
Well, this started with the discovery of clearing around the freshwater pond located on the Brad Street Farm Conservation Area prior to the initiating of the boundary survey, which we had applied for funds from the CPC back at least a year or so ago. And so on April 10th, I issued a notice of violation to Mr. Sabatini after discussing with, I guess, a supervisor and workmen who were at Mr. Sabatini's, I believe it's your residence now, at 239 Main Street. And Mr. Sabatini was out of town, contacted me later on, but issued for the reported activity of cutting and removal of vegetation, altering a 70 by 28 foot area, possibly bordering vegetated wetlands on town conservation land. I issued a verbal cease and desist, which included the removal of leaves and duff from the soil, which it was conveyed to me was an activity that was planned to occur. And so we alerted the commission and we made arrangements to consummate the already planned boundary marking project in order to actually certify whose property the activity had occurred on, because there was no boundary markers that I was aware of in evidence in that area. And we had a boundary line that was going to be traversing and bisecting the two prior established hayfields there, which had no physical demarcation on them as to where the boundary line went, which was one of the reasons why the survey project was applied for and thought of prior to this. So that project ended, I believe, on the 21st, and confirmed that almost all the cutting and clearing activity occurred on Town of Rowley Conservation area at the Brad Street Farm. And so, recommendation for the Commission's consideration this evening is the preparation and issuance of an enforcement order which calls for restoration of the cut and cleared area, as well as removal of the sand that was deposited on the shoreline of the freshwater pond, which can be clearly seen in one or two of the photographs. And so, cutting and removal of woody shrubs and ground cover, altering approximately 1,900 square feet of combined bordering vegetated wetlands, BVW, and 100-foot buffer zone to BVW, which is both a Wetlands Protection Act and local bylaw resource area. Sand was also deposited adjacent to the freshwater pond, and accumulated leaf litter and duff was removed. These activities were conducted without the issuance of a permit under either the Wetlands Protection Act or the town's wetlands bylaw, and recommending that resource area alterations resulting from said activity be corrected and the resource areas returned to their original condition. This would be accomplished by the submittal of a prepared restoration plan to be filed with the commission on or before July 8th, 2014, which would include full restoration of shrub and ground cover without any invasive species that were in the area, and some kind of protective barrier if that results in soil disturbance prepared by a wetland scientist, qualified wetland scientist for review by the commission.
So, Mr. Sabatini, what would you like to say?
The watering hole. The farm fields were constructed with underground ditches that collect and divert the water to the man-made watering hole for storage. Under my fields, there are ditches going through all those fields on my property. The watering hole has a pump system that was used to water the fields and the cows. So all the ditches that are on my property collects the water and drains it down to the watering hole. That watering hole is man-made. When the property was subdivided, the underground ditches that supply the watering hole remained on my property, while the watering hole remained on the town's property. The watering hole was also used for recreational purposes such as swimming and fishing for decades. The diving board is still in place. I assume the pond, certainly the side of the pond, was on my property since Brent had asked me to take the diving board down after I purchased the property last year. Since the watering hole was man-made, it was always in a field, never in a woods setting. Only through years of neglect did the watering hole get overgrown, mostly with bittersweet poison ivy and shady sumac. It's already been suggested that I should dig my own hole and divert my water into my new hole. The fields have been tilled, mowed, and hayed for hundreds of years up to the edge of the watering hole. The town of Rowley contracted with Colby Farms to continue that tradition. Mr. Colby tilled, mowed, and hayed the entire field, including the farm portion, the housing portion, and the conservation portion from 2008 to 2012, all the way up to the edge of the watering hole, within 6 to 8 feet. The other 6 to 8 feet in depth by 20 to 25 feet in width was sparsely open, as this was the diving board area. The surrounding area was consumed by either bittersweet vines, poison ivy, or the ground and poison ivy vines in the trees and scraggly sumac. When I took possession of the property, the town of Rowley Board of Selectmen kindly requested that I continue using Colby Farms to hay the entire property. I saw that as a reasonable request and I agreed. I conveyed that request to Brent. He disagreed, saying the town needed more fields. Ironically, Brent never stopped the town of Rowley from mowing the fields. The trails. Now, my purchase of the historic Brad Street Farm cuts off access to the town's hiking trails on the other side of the stone wall. Countless numbers of people came to me with that concern. I can say without exception that I have never denied anyone access onto my property and over the town's hiking trails. Hikers, dog walkers, cross-country skiers, people on snowshoes, the Boy Scouts, and horseback riders have all entered my property on a daily basis. As a steward of the farm, I encourage and welcome people onto my property. The maintenance of the trails. That being said, I volunteered to maintain the town's trails that border my property at my expense. The trail begins at the apple tree at the housing parcel, continues along the perimeter connecting to the community gardens, passing through my parcel, behind the barn, and down towards the diving board. From there it follows the perimeter of the field where it connects to the trail built by the Boy Scouts. Why do I do this? Because it's my opportunity to show my gratitude to the dozens of people that have helped me turn Rowley's historic landmark farmhouse, listed on the National Register of Historic Places, into a beautiful showpiece. The Board of Selectmen and Historic Commission have been most helpful. The town and Concom are not in the business of maintaining anything. They are only in the business of obtaining. There is no trail maintenance budget to maintain any trails. So I stepped up to the plate, and at my expense I maintain those trails every week. Those trails are not maintained weekly, they will immediately become impassable. The poison ivy will take over the sides of the fields, while the bittersweet and prickle bushes take over the wooded trails. Rowley residents need to be aware that if the trails located on town conservation land are not maintained, it will become unusable, unpassable, inaccessible, and in effect, a huge waste of millions of taxpayers' dollars. The water, well, we'll skip that one for now. The Bradstreet Farm has 3 wells. While the town of Rowley controlled the property, the primary well was used to supply water to the Rowley Community Gardens. This was done for several years. When I took possession of the property, I naturally, like a good neighbor, continued to allow the Rowley Community Gardens use of my wells. I did this for 2 seasons for free. Ironically, during the several years the town allowed the community gardens to use the water, there was never a problem. The Concom now sees this as a problem where I'm not allowed to give water to the community gardens. The solution to the community gardens water issue, dig a nearly 2,000-foot water line from Route 1A to the community gardens through several hundred feet of buffer zone wetlands. Another issue while we're at it. While we're talking about the issues of the Bradstreet Farm, the Recreation Department will be spending nearly $250,000 to build a temporary road and blow a hole right through the conservation forest consisting of 50 to 80-foot mature trees. Why am I here today? Because I want to talk about my civil liberties being violated, namely trespassing and criminal trespass. This board and its agents have no right to trespass on my property at any time. It is completely without my violation. You need a warrant to be on my property. You've trespassed on my property many, many times. You've driven on my property many times. We've seen you. Even the girl that's come before this board, she's driven across our property. We'll deal with her later for criminal trespassing as well. And that's, my friends, is why I'm here today, is talk about the routine criminal trespass this board and its members have going on people's property. I'm not the first one. I've talked to many people and it's done consistently. You've done it during hours. You have no badge, no town vehicle. We don't know who you are, and you just show up and roam around our properties. And enough's enough. You can't be doing that. Don't laugh at me, because you can't be on our property. It is criminal trespass, plain and simple, sir.
Facts not in evidence. I do not trust.
We have people on your, we have witnesses on my property. You've driven on my property, so that's vehicle trespassing. You walked on my property, that's trespassing. If this board has any question about that pond, I'll let you come on my property, stand on my driveway, and look for a pond. There's no way you can access that pond without crossing my property. You have to drive down my driveway about 1,000 feet and hike across acres of my property to find the pond. When the engineers came out, I staked my property with "Do not trespass" signs. The engineer says that sign has to be moved. You have to move it 50 feet to the right. Further proving my point that you can't access my property, you can't access the ponds, you can't access the hiking trails without crossing my property. If you want to get to the pond, you can go around the pond, you can go down Hammond Street and hike across many other people's properties to get to the pond. But you can't get to the pond without going across my property. Plain and simple, gentlemen. And that's why we're here to talk about the routine criminal trespassing on people's property. You can't do it. I have the laws of Commonwealth of Massachusetts right before me today. If you need to talk to them, I'll be happy to give them to you. That's all I want to talk about, is criminal trespass.
Well, that's not what we're gonna talk about.
Okay, then the meeting's adjourned.
The meeting's not adjourned.
What's that?
The meeting is not adjourned.
Then I'm adjourned, because we have no say to talk about anything unless we're talking about criminal trespassing, gentlemen.
Are you interested in talking about your restoration
Yeah.
plan?
Say that again?
You interested in telling us about your restoration plan?
I don't have one.
Do you intend to get one?
I can get one, but I don't have one.
You probably should, because
Good.
you're gonna need to,
That's fine, gentlemen. Ma'am,
and like this.
gentlemen, people.
Okay, so tell us about it. Tell us about your restoration plan. You're gonna hire a professional to prepare a restoration plan?
That's easy to do, gentlemen. Okay? But that goes beyond even anything. Because without a warrant, anything you found is inadmissible in court anyways. You know that, right? You cannot go on some of these people, take pictures, and then haul people in for charges. You realize that, right? I'm just saying. Just saying.
Just trying to keep it on topic.
I'm trying to keep it on topic. You've entered onto people's property illegally,
Yeah.
photographed, video, driven, walked, hiked. on people's property. I'm not the only one that's done it. I've listened to the YouTube videos, I've seen you done it many times. This board is rampant for doing that, it's known for doing that. It's known for going through other people's property to get to other people's lands.
I think actually this board has a pretty clear policy of not doing that without permission.
They do it. There's no permission. Jim,
Okay, so,
I was in the Dominican Republic. I'm out of the, when he said out of the area, I'm out of the country. I'm in international waters, gentlemen and ladies. So, show me where somebody called me, contacted me, asked me permission to go on my property. You can't do it. You can't do it. So in this case, specifically, if you want to talk about my case,
yeah,
it's trespass.
I would like to talk about.
Then I posted it, and it's criminal trespass. Then it's an automobile, so it's automotive trespass.
All right, let me ask you this question. Do you
So-
agree with the survey results, as you understand them?
Yes,
Okay, so that the lot lines are correctly marked as far as you're concerned?
I'll just agree that they are, I mean, I didn't check them, cross-check them stuff yet, but we'll just assume that they're accurate.
All right, so do you agree that you were responsible for the activities that are the subject of the violation?
Yes,
Okay. So if you agree on those two things, then you are agreeing that you violated the wetlands protection law and the town bylaw, and you therefore need to correct that violation with the restoration plan.
I have to be responsible for it even though I was out of the country.
Yes.
That's the gist of it.
Well, do you
People that
agree
were,
that,
people working for him went down there and did it, that's all I can tell you.
okay,
So having not seen it, having not been there, I can't tell you anything more about it other than I got a phone call or an email
okay,
while I was out of the country down the islands, and I quickly called them back.
okay,
Short of that, I really don't know a lot.
okay, but,
But I can tell you, but going beyond that,
you know,
you can't trespass on people's property, gentlemen, and that, you got a big issue with that. And I am this close to filing charges,
well,
not only against him, but against the board, and I can do that. So,
we're not here.
but that has to be addressed.
No.
You can't be doing that stuff, and you're taking it very lightly, and it's insulting. It's insulting, Doug, that you sit here,
The
you
problem is.
wanna look at the papers, but you wanna skip over that.
No,
And you're talking about, you're blowing right past a violation of people's rights. This is not Russia, it's not Pakistan, it's not Afghanistan, it's America. You cannot go in on anybody's property without a warrant. Plain and simple. Do you understand that?
well, are you talking about the surveyors or Brent?
Talking about Brent.
All right, Brent, what do you have to say about that? Since Mr. Sabatini
Last
doesn't seem
time-
to want
last-
to talk about anything else.
Last time I was there, my vehicle has never left the proposed town right-of-way that extends from Main Street and goes, finalizes in the cul-de-sac that's now been marked out in the field adjacent to the community gardens. My vehicle has never driven anyplace else on that property.
You drove down my driveway, I got bringing
That's
several
not your
witnesses. Of
driveway.
Yes, it
It's
is.
not your driveway.
course it is, you drove all the way down to my end of Rotary. You
It's
pulled
not
up to the
your- it's
second,
not
you pulled
your
up to the
rotary.
second driveway.
It's not your rotary.
Sure it is. Where's your map?
Right here. You're talking about.
That's
this
the
one?
town, that's the town right-of-way.
You drove right up to there. Right there. You went down here, you came back, you drove all the way up there, and you parked right there, and you went to talk to Maria and Sergio.
Oh, yeah,
Right, now
Yes,
you're
I
on my
did.
land.
right, and no one told me to get off.
You drove on my land. You can't go on my land without permission.
Actually, yes, I can.
Since when?
You can check with the Raleigh Police Department. I'm allowed to go to the residence, to the front door or back door, main entrance of whatever dwelling is on a property to seek permission to enter, which is what I did.
You cannot go on, you cannot
Yes,
walk
you
around
can.
people's property, Brent.
I didn't walk around your property. as
You hiked
just-
my trails.
As you just said. No, I
Dude,
have not.
look at
hiked
the
your
pictures.
trails.
You came over here, and even if you parked here, anywhere there, you went like this.
I did not.
You never walked on my property. You want to say that? You want to say
Never,
that?
ever? Of course I have, because.
You
we
never
talked
walked on my
about it.
property
Mr.
and took
Sabatini.
pictures.
Mr. Sabatini,
You never walked on my property and
Mr.
took pictures.
Sabatini.
Yes, Doug.
keep your voice down.
You never walked on my property and took pictures.
time and date, and I'll respond to specific incidents.
Those days you put
When I
pictures,
was-
did you walk on my property and take pictures?
When I was accompanied by you,
You took those pictures when accompanied by me? Tell us about the date you went to my property when I was in Dominican Republic.
you just did.
Who was there with you?
No one was there with me.
So you walked on my property when I was in the Dominican Republic.
I drove up
And
the
inspected
driveway
the-
to the
inspected-
the dwelling of residents and knocked on the door.
And
spoke
you didn't,
to
you know,
the
so you
person.
never walked down to the pond? In question.
But you can walk down to the pond without walking on your property.
No, you can't.
Well, the pond is on town
But
property.
you can't get to it without walking on my property, Doug. That's what I'm trying to
You can go
explain to
through the
you.
woods.
You can.
You can't.
You must be able to.
You can
No,
go
you
through the
can't.
On
woods.
property.
Doug, that's what I'm saying. You wanna talk about this, come to my land. Where's the pond? The pond's over here.
The pond says pond, it's right there.
That is deeply forested property. You have to go like all the way around and come back. Or you go down Hammond Street and come all the way across and work the way up the back. You cannot get to that pond, Douglas, without going on my property. That's the whole point of talking to you about this.
Well, that is not the whole point of talking about this.
I'm trying to talk about criminal trespass on people's property, but you guys don't think that's a viable discussion.
No, I don't, because my agent says he didn't do that, and I believe him. Because
Okay.
that's our policy.
Why don't we postpone this to the next meeting, and I'll bring in the witnesses that saw him.
No.
And then
Why
you can
don't-
discuss
no, no, no.
about how he took the pictures.
Why don't we talk about your restoration plan, because that's what the purpose of the Conservation Commission
There's
is.
nothing I can do about that today.
Nope. It-
There's nothing I can do about that, because you're gonna ask about an engineer and the pictures and all that stuff. Nothing
Yeah.
can be done.
Okay.
There's
So-
nothing. Because I'm not an arborist, so I can't tell you about a plant or a bush,
Yeah.
or a shrub, or some dirt.
All right, so let me ask you this question.
But we're gonna talk about the
How do
pictures
you-
when they're done.
How do you feel about July 8th as a deadline for a restoration plan to be submitted? That's our proposed deadline. Can you meet that deadline?
I'm guessing, I don't know. I mean, that's
Don't
just a
guess.
picture, right?
Pardon?
Is that a picture or an installation?
No, a plan. A plan, prepared by a professional.
I can call somebody and see if they can do that, make it happen.
Well, if we vote on July 8th, it's July 8th. If you think you need more time, you better say so now.
Do more time,
How much more time do you think you
do
need?
another month.
So how about August 1st?
That's fine.
Okay, so you'll have a restoration plan to us by August 1st. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And you agree that the alteration of the pond was on town property?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and you agree that was done either by you, or I think you basically said by people under your direction?
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right. I don't think there's anything else that we need to discuss regarding this.
But I wanna talk about, okay,
You-
now I wanna talk about back to the criminal trespassing.
It
Can I
has-
ask a couple of questions? on that?
Absolutely, Kurt.
My understanding is that some time ago, Brent indicated to you that the property would be surveyed orally, in an oral conversation with you. I don't really.
When he went for the 17,000 in CPC funds, you mean?
I don't know, Brent, when was that? You mentioned it to me the other day.
I saw it in the board meeting.
I don't know the exact date, but it was at the time when Mr. Sabatini first started clearing vegetation and watching the kayak down at the pond. It was quite a while ago.
And back when you approached the house to ask permission, was the property posted for trespassing at that time?
No, it wasn't.
So posting no trespassing is only been recent, right?
Yes. So that's what makes it criminal trespassing.
I don't understand the law on that.
Trespassing is when you go on somebody's land. Criminal trespass is when it's posted, or you orally say, you, and you cannot go on my land. Then it becomes criminal trespassing. So trespassing is when you walk on my land and you take pictures, or drive them. That's, seeing how you got pictures, we just assume that it's trespassing. When it's done after it's posted, as he's been on the property after it's posted, then it becomes criminal trespassing.
I understand that from you, the day before, either the day you called me at night, that you and Brent had had a conversation out on the property and that you had invited him over to look at the boundary markers or you had walked over to the boundary, you had walked across your property at that point.
True, I was present with that day,
And
yes,
the
sir.
property was posted as no trespassing at that point?
Yes, sir, it was.
Just checking on those disparate facts.
While I was there, I have no problem coming across.
All right. Any other questions by commissioners? Anything else you'd like to add, Brent?
No, I just encountered Mr. Sabatini numerous times before the no trespassing signs went up, and never had a conversation with him where he told me to get off of his property. And in fact, at one point in time, he was telling me about his mowing of all the perimeter of the fields, so specifically people could walk. I probably did walk down across one of his mowed corridors there to look at the pond, not knowing that he wasn't here. I had no idea where you were. But my vehicle has never driven across your property. And driving down your driveway to the dwelling, as I said, I've checked with the Raleigh Police Department in regards to that. And that's not a problem when you go seek permission to talk to whoever is the occupant of the dwelling. Again, I don't have any way of tracing your phone call, so I had no idea where you were calling me from when you contacted me later on. But I don't recall you ever telling me not to set foot on your property or to leave the property and that I wasn't welcome there.
This is the first time you've been on my property, is when I walked with you with the engineer.
When it was posted.
I don't think you ever walked on my property with me, on that property. I've seen you in your offices, you mean?
You were showing me about the mowing down at the bottom of the field towards where the Myopia Hunt Club has the jump going into the woods there at one point in time. We were together. That was many moons ago.
I've only owned the property for a year. Couldn't have been that long. I don't think you've ever been on that property with me. Only,
I guess I must
Only
have
one
just
Kurt was-
I guess I just must have imagined you on the tractor and stuff.
must have.
Well, Mike, I guess I'm a little confused here and I'm not sure. I understand that you're upset about some of those things that have gone on here, but, and I get the feeling from you that you're going to step up to the plate here and address the matters with regard to the pond and that and make things whole. I just don't know where we go with regard to your concerns about trespassing. If you don't want anybody on your property at any point in time, with respect to this commission, then, you know, perhaps you should give us something in writing to do that. I don't know that it serves anybody's interest in going forward with a lot of finger pointing and complaining about circumstances that may wind up costing both you and the town money, other than the matter at hand.
The other thing I'd like you to think about, Mr. Sabatini, is I heard you say at several junctures that you maintain trails for the benefit of the townspeople, that you're proud of doing that it's an opportunity to help the town. I'm struggling with how that is consistent with saying that anybody on your property is trespassing unless they have your express permission.
Because the label in that pond, a pond, when it's been a watering hole, when it's a man-made watering hole, where the water on my property was intentionally dug. The ditches were intentionally dug and aimed to create and dug a ditch.
Yeah.
People went out and dug a ditch, so the water would go off. And think of it as a gutter on a house with a downspout, and you put a bucket under it. That's what they made.
I certainly
So
understand
now
that
you push
point.
the envelope and you call it a vegetated wetlands.
Well, unfortunately,
Where
that's the way the law
where the
reads.
town, right, where the town has for years mowed it right to the water's edge.
Well,
Now I clear it and
unfortunately,
clean it,
that's the
and now
way
it's an
the-
issue.
That's the way the law reads. If it's a
Right.
wetland, it's a wetland, whether it was man-made or not. This is a wetland, okay? This is a resource area, to use our terminology. The fact that it was or wasn't man-made, the fact that it has ditches running into it, doesn't affect that fact. That's why you have to restore it, okay? But you've been wanting to talk not so much about that as about trespass, but the whole subject of trespass, I don't understand how Brent or anybody else is supposed to detect that you consider it trespass when you told us that you welcome townspeople on your property and on these trails that you maintain. You're certainly free to make it no trespass area, and you've done that now. But historically, that's certainly not the way you handled it. I'd like you to think about that.
Fair enough.
Okay, all right. So, we already voted on what did we vote on?
Haven't voted on anything.
Okay,
No.
so we need to vote on the,
Confirm the issue.
confirm the issuance of the enforcement order.
Well,
And, I think Mr. Sabatini said that he thought he would have a restoration plan to us by August 1st. Is there any reason we need to see this before then? No? So,
What-
pardon?
Whenever there's something concrete to review and submit, that
Well, this, right.
doesn't
this
have to
is-
wait till then.
No, this is administrative, so we don't have to continue it to another date.
Correct.
Yeah. So why don't we leave it like this? When we get your restoration plan, which will be on or before August 1st, we'll review it. And Brent will be in touch with you to discuss it, and if necessary, we'll have you come back in and tell you what we think of it and what we want to do with it or don't want to do with it. Okay? That could be well before August 1st if you can get us the plan before August 1st.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, sir.
All right, then, I need a motion to confirm the issuance of the notice of violation? Is that, no, or enforcement order. Is there a motion?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
And
Aye. All against? Thank you, Mr. Sabatini.
Thank you, gentlemen, and lady.
Thanks for coming in, Mike.
Yes, sir.
can I see the plan? No, the plan. Thanks. Did not realize that piece of land over that way. Didn't realize this, I thought it kinda went like that.
No.
Okay. I extremely doubt that people who work the gardens understand that.
Where are the gardens on this map?
There.
Actually, they go over to here, right? So that's the stone wall. They go more or less over here.
All right, well, moving on, we have two more items, the 910 and the 915 items.
Can I circulate this and let this?
Yeah.
Yep, sign.
Sorry, which agenda item did you wanna do next? Did you wanna do the conservation restriction or?
Oh, forgot about that one. Yes, let's do that. This is the continued review of the proposed conservation restriction for Brad Street Farm Conservation Area, land off Main Street, Lot 8. This is the, I think this is the final draft at this point, is that right, Trent?
Yeah.
I think we just had a couple more comments, which I saw an email from Bob Ford saying they were fine with him.
Yes, and town council is currently on vacation, but we'll do that. Come back. So I think, I believe I copied you on the email with the suggested changes, or did I not get to that? Oh, yes, I did, okay.
No, yes, you did.
Yes.
Oh, right, regarding the fencing.
Right, yeah, just a couple of minor points, and
Right.
so at this point, I did get confirmation that town council would be able to comment back before the selectmen's meeting of June 2nd, so I was hoping that if everything proposed met with the commission's satisfaction, that upon getting anticipated positive comment from town council, that to put the CR before the Board of Selectmen for their brief review before it gets submitted to the state. Because that's the next step before we all get involved with signing it. It goes to the state to make sure.
Right.
It's
Any,
their approval.
any commissioners have any further comments on the final draft?
Nope.
No? No? Okay, so I think we're all good with it. Bob Ford is good with it. Assuming Judy Pickett is good with it, it will go to the selectmen. Assuming they're good with it, it will go to the state. Okay. Is there anything else we need to do on that today?
No, just wanted to make sure that,
Yep.
you know, you were all in concert with my minor suggested.
Nope, except I do.
Okay, so we'll just wait for town council. Maybe if you would be comfortable, maybe it would be opportune to, you know, make a motion to recommend its adoption by the selectmen if town council doesn't identify any concerns
Sure.
with it. That- I don't wanna be
Sure.
too premature, but there hasn't been any real substantive changes.
No, I think
That
that makes sense, because they would wanna know that we support it. So
Right.
we might as well have a formal vote, so let's see. This would be a motion to approve the final draft of the conservation restriction for the Brad Street Farm Conservation Area, subject to any revisions suggested by town council.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All against? Motion carries. I'm sure Judy Pickett will approve it, because the changes are very minor.
Okay.
Does that need to be, no, I guess we just approved it, okay. Approved.
Yeah.
Subject.
Yeah. clean up the document and everything, let's
Take
go
all
back on that.
take all the redlining out and stuff like that, but yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Another good job of shepherding that through,
yes.
along with everything else you're doing.
Okay, so who does that leave? That leaves 706 Haverhill Street?
Yep. And the veterans.
I had a phone, I'll talk about it, I had a phone call.
Okay. Let's get the 706 Haverhill, there's no memo in that, right?
Right, yes, I'm afraid I didn't,
Oh, sorry.
didn't get to that. I actually did the inspection this morning. I had reviewed the recommendation letter from the applicant's professional and recommended some changes to their letter. But basically, everything looks great out there, with just a couple minor things. There's some, the erosion control, the straw wattle is still there, needs to be removed. This foundation drain, he had put a rock in front of it. He had experience with an animal getting into one of those and plugging it up by dying in it. And so he plugged it up with a rock, and I said, well, what'd you put the rock in front of it for? It can't drain. He goes, well, I had an experience with an animal getting stuck in one and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, there's little drain covers. There's little grates that are made that actually will fit in that. Will the lawnmower go over? And I said, well, I think it's made of the same, high impact plastic that the pipe is. I think it'll fit, right in there, and it'll keep any curves from going up it. So,
I suppose the smell of dead animals doesn't help sell the house.
well, it didn't drain too well with
That too.
the critter in there. So,
looks kind of.
but other than that, it's very well vegetated. Lawns in, gutters all go into the dry wells, which infiltration chambers, which are indicated on the plan. The actual square footage of disturbance, once all the calculations are done, actually resulted in less than the original order had allowed. So in that regards, definitely compliance with the order. All the no cut, no disturb posts are up, the signage is all up. Looks good, so this would, so my recommendation is for consideration of a complete certificate of compliance. There are a number of, I have 2 pages of ongoing conditions.
Okay. Just the usual.
Well, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. As
Well,
well as
thank
this,
you,
this project also had the riverfront area that
Right.
adjoins the stream that now adjoins our conservation land that was restricted as being a no-cut, no-disturbance area to provide wildlife habitat corridor along that stream.
It's nice to have a project that has just done right.
Yeah,
That's good.
yeah, you did that large replication area that removed all that mounded
All that-
fill out of the
Yes,
wetlands too.
right, and
stuff,
trash
so.
and things, yeah. Yep. Okay, so is there, unless there's comments by any commissioner, is there a motion to issue a complete certificate of compliance with
With ongoing
the
conditions.
stated ongoing perpetual conditions? Is there a motion
So move.
and a second? First, second. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm
Aye.
sorry, who seconded
Dave.
on that?
First and
Dave,
second.
thank you.
And the motion carries.
This is Mr. Bussin.
Yes. Mr. Bussin.
Been for sale stamp there for the longest time. Must be asking too much money.
Yeah, the first one took a while to sell, but this one, he's only recently had it done. In fact, he's still touching up the inside, doing the finish work, so. And he's anticipating closing in a few, 2 or 3 weeks, I think. Kurt?
Oh, sorry, thank you.
Okay. Guess we're down to the
9:15
final
item.
item.
Enforcement order, 19 Bradford Street, Raleigh Veterans Association altering bordering vegetated wetlands and buffer zone by grading or removal. Oops, wait a second, let's put this away.
Oh,
Yeah, forgot, sorry.
No, this goes with 17.
Yeah.
And these go with Bussey.
I think I sent an email around, kind of inadvertently discovered the cleanup project being conducted at the back of the VFW hall. And also discovered that apparently there was a past history that was an area that was subject to a lot of fill and dumping and everything, and so they were innocently trying to get rid of these mounded piles of various debris and soil at the rear of the property that butt right up to bordering vegetated wetlands and the stream corridor.
This is the rear?
Yeah, so this is Bradford Street
Right,
here,
that's the
this is
driveway.
the entrance,
Yeah.
and I looked down from the street and saw that, and I drove down onto the property, it being an open establishment that invites the public onto its premises. I didn't stop and check with anybody in the office as I drove to the rear and could see a large extent of grading that had gone up in their cleaning efforts. The problem was that some of the mounded debris, when they tried to flatten the piles of fill, just had unstable slopes and it kind of slumped in some cases into bordering vegetated wetlands, as indicated by the prolific growth of skunk cabbage, which is an obligate wetland species. Although there's a fair assemblage of invasive species located on the site too, apparently growing out of the fill piles. And so I discussed with them and kind of ended up being directed to talk to Mr. James Edwards, Jim Edwards, the assistant manager. The manager, Mr. Hardy, he is, unfortunately I found out, has health issues. Of course, that was after I was talking to him about the wetlands violation, which I don't, he wasn't aware of and wasn't happy about. So we initially worked to get the unstable slope of loose fill pulled back and graded, and they had some large mounds of wood chips that they were going to use to aesthetically landscape this area once they got these fill piles out of the way. That's been spread. So kind of belatedly, because of the workload with everything else, I was only able to mail the notice of violation to Mr. Edwards this past weekend. I spoke to him on the phone though this morning. We're meeting tomorrow morning in the office, and here's kind of what I said to him, because he's vacationing in Vermont and he wasn't going to get here and be able to attend the meeting tonight. So I wanted to make sure he had the opportunity of addressing the commission if, what we end up seeing on the site tomorrow morning, if there's any type of concern of his or disagreement. But they're working diligently to get it stabilized. They realize that, they inadvertently were doing work in a regulated wetland resource area and the buffer zone to it. And they're moving to stabilize by using the mulch and I showed them where I believe there were unstable edges and precipitous mounds of this loose soil, and they raked it back as best they could. There's quite a collection of chunks of asphalt, various other things from the historic dumping that has occurred on the property, so it was a little problematic to try and grade things, but I'm gonna find out, you know, how things went tomorrow, because I haven't heard from him, hadn't been back to the site. So I told him that our normal procedure for something like this, that was a fairly clear-cut wetlands violation, would be to consider issuing an enforcement order with the direction that stabilization activities take place. Let's see, did I say it in here? Rake back unstable fill at edge of BVW and stabilize with mulch or wood chips by May 30th. Attend Concom meeting and submit letter stating intent to comply by June 17th. So, again, he isn't able to attend tonight, but I said I would convey to the commission that the opportunity would be left open to come before the commission on the 17th, if he so desired. But otherwise, if our site visit goes well tomorrow or whatever, that if the commission is amenable to it just achieving stabilization and being mulched with wood chips, it's an extremely altered and abused area. I'm not sure that trying to take any restoration efforts would have any replantings would have any type of positive impact beyond the fact that they've already mulched it with wood chips.
Yeah.
Most of what was growing on the piles of fills was invasives. And
Phragmites? Is it Phragmites in it?
you know, I'd have to look closely. There was everything else. Japanese knotweed, barberry,
That was probably.
bittersweet.
Be my guess.
Yeah.
And the commission does have a file, has a record that shows there was dumping of debris in 1989 and then dumping of debris in 1996. He said the property, because apparently they invited Phil in there to develop the property originally, that it historically kind of had, everybody thought it was a place to go to dump stuff.
It's a town dump.
So and their efforts were, again, solely to get rid of these piles of fill, which just slope right straight down into the wetlands, because that was part of the material that was then used to fill the property, I guess,
I've
historically.
been told, and correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of, you know, when you brought this to their attention, that a lot of volunteers hopped to and started pulling back the soils and doing the kinds of things that you had pointed out that should be done.
Yeah, he
Is that a
mentioned
fair
Arthur
statement?
Page, and Arthur Page came right down with his equipment and volunteered.
And what I'm going to suggest is that in the spirit of Memorial Day, which was just yesterday, that we hold off until after you've had the meeting and wait till the next meeting before we consider issuing an enforcement order confirmation.
There's no harm in that, if he would like to come in
Right.
and address us.
Well, I went
They're
over.
obviously, they're addressing the problem.
Well, I was gonna say, I went over all aspects of it, and his intent is to comply. He said he's gonna come in, we'll go do the site visit, he'll provide us with a letter, you know, saying that they, you know, stabilized things.
So does the enforcement order have to happen
I think it should, because it,
for records?
well, yes, and because, again, clearly the pictures show loose soil going right down and smothering skunk cabbage, so it's kind of hard to say that Phil didn't inadvertently get in the wetlands. I've described it as best I could: removal of soil piles, disturbance of vegetation by grading, altering, in the 100-foot buffer zone to BVW, resulting in approximately 50 square feet of loose fill in bordering vegetated wetlands. Previously altered area may have been historic dump when filled prior to Wetlands Protection Act, area adjacent to parking lot dominated by invasive species. And I said the, you know, property owner shall cease and desist from all activity in the buffer zone and or resource area. Property owner shall take the following action: rake back unstable fill at edge of BVW and stabilize with mulch or wood chips by May 30th. Attend Concom meeting and submit letter stating intent to apply by June 17th. Now, attending the meeting isn't prerequisite necessary on issuing enforcement order, I said, you know, we just wanted to adhere to the process of always giving a person or a responsible party the ability to address the commission if they, you know, so choose.
I'd prefer to wait till the next meeting before we make a decision on that.
Oh, yeah.
How about adding to all of that, posting no cut, no disturb at the edge of the pavement, back to the brook?
I would actually recommend not doing that,
And that would be why.
because there's dumped asphalt and all manner of possible solid waste there.
So you would be clearing it up.
There's all sorts of invasive species. I mean, if by whatever, you know, if they came into some type of money to do a remediation, I wouldn't want us to quote unquote inadvertently hamstring them from any other efforts that they may wish to get involved with, removing waste and things like that. I mean, there's chunks of asphalt there that are.
Yeah, but to the contrary, if you don't put anything up there 5 years from now, they're not gonna remember.
And also, if some remediation ended up happening down line, I mean, those posts could always be removed or moved and then replaced, right?
They'd have to ask us anyway.
Yeah.
I always reverse that, or make the no cut, no disturb contingent upon continued existence, continued.
Well, it's a regulated area and they should, you know, again,
Yeah, it's good.
again, it was a volunteer effort that came together quickly and they didn't know to come consult with us. I'm not sure that imposing a perpetual restriction on the buffer zone there would,
Well, we can't,
I mean, really an
We
enforcement
can't
order
just-
isn't a mechanism
can't,
to do it anyway.
my perception, maybe I'm incorrect, we can't impose a no cut, no disturb. But the other side of the coin is that, in my view, there should be some protection of the wetlands by letting people know they're there, and it's a public situation. You know, it's a clump, it's an
Maybe they could borrow the
organization.
signs at Todd Farm and stick them up over
You know,
there. I don't know where those came
I'm
from.
just saying that, you know, if you had something saying, don't do it, then people would remember.
Yeah.
Even though I don't think we legally can tell them to do that, can we, under an enforcement order?
Not that I'm
No.
aware of.
No, so we're not imposing a no cut, no disturb, we're just saying, let people know it's there.
Well, let's, if we take up Kurt's suggestion and defer this to 3 weeks from now,
Yeah.
perhaps the gentleman will come in and talk to us and we could discuss this with him.
Yeah.
Something he could do voluntarily, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, I suspect that whoever dumped all that there was not associated with the club. It was-
Oh, the dumping was all historic too.
First of all, it's historic, and second, it was probably at midnight, and it's just people emptying their their pickup trucks into the convenient parking lot.
I mean, I wouldn't be necessarily that correct.
No, but it's perfectly possible. It's a
Sure.
public, it's unrestricted access to a dark
Yeah.
parking lot in the middle of town,
Right.
But that, I mean, my
and
point
it
is
is a
that
mess.
my point is that facility was put up from the original 40, 50 years ago, when people just weren't aware,
Right.
right? So it could have been anybody and anything.
And the whole
But-
parking lot is probably filled.
Phil,
So, as he
My
said,
point.
we probably invited people to dump
Yep.
fill, clean fill, but it wasn't always clean. Yeah, it was fill. That's how things were done. So,
well, you can just see by the topography of that,
yes.
it slopes straight down, so
Yep.
guaranteed there's quite a bit of film there.
It's about the ugliest piece of wetlands in town.
Oh, yeah. Still.
It's really,
Getting slowly better though.
it's really a mess. It's terrible to look at.
That reminds me that Fort Rowley on the other side
Don't even go there.
Is up for sale. And
And if we have any chance to stick a nose back in there, it would be
To influence the next
Oh, we
one.
did.
Well, we did.
On several occasions,
We found
At least-
open orders and he
You know,
had his fence up for the no cut, no disturb. So I've glanced in there a couple of times and actually looked from Summer Street, because I can look across the backyard of the house on the corner and I can see right in the back, and I haven't seen any activity going beyond
That's
the
good.
fence that is supposed to indicate
Because he's
no cut, no
not there.
disturb.
Is that right?
Well, he spends a lot of time elsewhere.
He was talking about moving to Maine at one point.
Hmm?
He was talking about moving to Maine at one point. He
He
wanted the
spends a
town
lot of time there, yeah.
to grant him a variance,
Right.
zoning variance or something.
All right, so for purposes of today, let's postpone consideration of the enforcement order for 3 weeks, and certainly invite him to come in and talk to us about it. I think that everybody's heart's in the same place on this one. They're trying to clean it up, really.
Well, one of the reasons, just remember that one of the reasons for this enforcement order is to also give them a written document that has allowed them to do
Exactly.
what we've asked them to do so
Exactly.
far, which has been at my direction as far
Right.
as
Which I think is.
achieving stable slopes and
That's what-
mulching.
And that's what they want to do, so, yeah,
Well,
hopefully
right.
things
They,
will
again, they
progress.
didn't realize
Right.
they'd gotten into the wetlands, that it was regulated wetlands. They were all about the cleanup and not realizing what got left afterwards.
All right, so is there a motion to continue the hearing in this matter to June 17th?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All against? It's continued to June 17th.
Okay. Okay. I'll meet with them tomorrow and find out everything that's going on.
Well, I'd also like to thank you, Brent, for the attention to me to the situation and working with them in the first place to try and give them some guidance and direction.
Right. Yeah, it's not a situation in which you want to.
Well, I appreciate
Discouraged.
that, but actually I had a lot of misgivings when I found out my initial contact with Mr. Hardy and Mr. Hardy's very tenuous health conditions. Because we started off not communicating very well about, we wanted to talk about flower beds, I wanted to talk about the fill in the wetlands, and then I found out later on that he's like a couple of months away from possibly departing us because of cancer. So I felt
Okay.
if I could redo the initial introductions a little better, but I had no way of
No.
knowing he was in a sensitive state.
Well, I know that from discussions with at least one of the board members of the VFW, that they are aware of it, and they're anxious to do the right thing.
Alrighty, so that brings us to the end of the formal agenda. Do you have any permits and enforcement issues you want to bring up, besides what we've already talked about?
Well, only the fact I distributed for the commission the administrative consent order that was issued in regards to 887
yeah.
Haverhill Street.
That was interesting reading. Who's that involved?
That's
Okay,
Mr. Sean Blair.
Right. Big property.
Oh, yes.
We never even,
Big, huge violation because you can't see anything from the street.
we never even got involved in it. It was just straight.
Well,
state
no,
action.
because I requested that
State take it.
I request the state take
And
it
they
over
did.
because it was so big.
Yep.
So the only thing, originally, I dug up the original email that I sent on June 4th, 2013 to Doug and Kurt. the initial phone call was about trucking activity. And I had a brief discussion with Ken Ward, the building inspector, because I'm not an expert or anything in the town zoning. But he tells me that this appears to be a commercial business that's operating outside an area that's zoned for it. And so I didn't know if the commission wanted me to forward the documentation I got from DEP in regards to this administrative consent order, because it confirms and substantiates that he's conducting a business out there. And that's kind of what the original complaint was. If I hadn't discovered the wetland stuff, the trucking complaint I would have sent over to the zoning board of appeals, and I'm wondering if that isn't where this should still go.
So where is this at?
It's on Haverhill Street, right near the,
There's no real landmark to give you, to be quite
well, it's
honest
near the,
with you.
near the
Back
river
by
there, near
old
the
house.
mill, whatever the, what do you call that waterway there?
What? It's
Right.
on,
Well, it backs
it's on
up to
Upper
Muddy
Mill
Creek.
Pond.
To Muddy Creek,
Yeah.
Muddy Creek and Mill Pond, so right, that part of Haverhill Street where that goes in.
Where Greenbelt has their, Yule, is it pronounced Yule or
Yes.
Yule,
Yeah.
next to Upper Mill Pond?
Do you know what they have was?
Greenbelt does the, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
polo ponies. isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah.
Something like
Right,
that, or-
Yeah.
yes, in the
The
side,
hush.
right there.
Yeah,
On the right, heading towards the.
behind
Good,
that,
good,
That's
yeah.
behind that is where this property
Oh,
lies.
Back there.
Yeah, but it's off of a gravel drive that at one point was
Yeah.
going to be called Red Pine Way.
Yeah,
It
yeah, I
acts-
remember us talking about.
There's like
that.
3 single-family residences
Incorrect.
accessed off of that gravel driveway, but it goes across Muddy Creek.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of the alterations he
So
undertook along.
to answer your question, Brent, I think we're pretty much obliged to do that. You know, as a town board, if we become aware of a violation of the town bylaw, I don't think.
Well, I'm
we
not
have any
capable
choice.
of interpreting it, but
No.
it appears I've got documentation
That's
where he
right.
signed off and said he's doing this.
So that's right, that's not for
So
us
I-
to judge, but
so I'd
it's,
let-
it's also not for us to decide not to do that. So I
Right.
think my view would be we're pretty much bound to make that report to another town board. You might say we're mandated to do that. That's our duty as a town board.
And to the building inspector.
To the building inspector, yeah, and then he can act on it as he sees fit, but.
Now, the other aspect of this is, I don't know, we're supposed to be copied on whatever the proposed mitigation and restoration is out here. But the other issue is that it appears, based on, again, on this administrative consent order, that all these activities on this property should have been jurisdictional under the stormwater management bylaw for the amount of disturbance, and I have no idea,
It's definitely that big.
I have no idea what's proposed
Well, I guess.
for the
we'll do it-
restoration, but that may also quote-unquote supposedly trigger.
Well, let's hope the state is conscious of that.
Well, the state is not conscious of our bylaw.
No, I understand that, but they're conscious of stormwater considerations.
That's a uniform bylaw, city and town, or well, statewide, right?
No,
No,
no, this is our town of Raleigh
right,
stormwater and erosion control bylaw.
but
But
they
we have
are.
a deadline to do that by the state, right?
Right, but our bylaw
does
isn't
every other
necessarily
town.
like everyone else's.
Okay.
But, yeah, but your point is exactly my point, which is they're aware that stormwater bylaws were mandated and that therefore we probably have
Right.
one, and even if we don't, there are stormwater
Right.
rules. So I think the answer to your question is, let's see what the administrative, whatever they call it,
Administrative consent order.
consent order says, and if it requires us to get it.
Well, I think it says it, well, and again, I believe it leaves it to the property owner that if he needs to get any other permits for what he's
Oh, I see what you're saying.
proposing to do, so what I'm wondering is if, except I don't know what the extent and nature of the project is because the plans haven't been filed, but we're supposed to be copied, so I guess all I can say at this point in time, would the commission like me to come back whenever I get
Yeah,
the restoration plans are and
Yeah.
see?
well,
We'll try to evaluate as to whether it actually triggers the need for stormwater.
Or you can call people at the, you know, whoever approves it at the issuing authority there, and
Well, I believe it says in here that, because I asked, I believe it says in here that the town of Raleigh is to be copied on their restoration
yeah.
plans.
Should be.
As well as that the property owner is responsible for whatever other permits he needs.
I'm kind of guessing that this guy's going to be a little more careful about permitting starting right about now. Let's hope.
I would recommend that you also copy the rest of the commissioners on the stuff that you originally sent Doug and I, because it gives you the land picture.
Okay.
Yeah, and it makes
Photographs.
interesting, I think it
Yeah.
makes interesting reading.
I thought I did too, but I'll go
If
check.
you
to
did.
make sure.
I got,
You got it? If you got it, then probably everybody.
I mean,
got it.
I remember briefly glancing at it, I haven't had time to read all that.
Oh, it's the pictures that it was.
Yeah, I may have just
Oh, I
sent the
didn't- no, I
administrative
didn't-
consent
I
order.
didn't see any pictures.
Oh, I didn't have any
Oh.
pictures.
Yeah, you sent some. Sent some. There
The
were,
only pictures I was ever able to take,
Satellites
because I
or
had no
something, or-
permission to enter onto the property, the only pictures I was ever able to take, I took from Greenbelt's reservation, looking through the woods. And they weren't very indicative, they just kind of give you the yellow of an excavator.
But
working.
we had satellite pictures,
Yes.
photography.
Well, oh yeah.
Which was pretty damning. That was why we referred
yeah,
it.
I think they would be interested in it, if they didn't get, yeah.
Well, I thought.
Yeah, I probably did not share that with everybody, because at the time, I was having discussions with Doug and Kurt as to the nature of this, and could I please refer this to the state, because it was going to be
Pass the
extremely time consuming and
Like a year
Humongous.
ago, right?
This was
Yes.
exactly a year ago, yeah,
Yeah.
or 11 months ago, right?
June 4th, 2013.
Yep. All right, so, anything else?
Mm.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The meeting is adjourned.